by Empress Marina, yourselves, many of you who have answered our call, who have returned the R&R, the questionnaire that we sent out for ones-on-ones to fill out and return, so we can see where we all are in our meditation as to what are the pressing problems, what are the defunct practices, you know. So I give thanks, and welcome again to everyone. Mama Desta, you can take it.
Okay, give thanks, Priest Doggy. I would like to just read from the concept note that was developed by an August selection of I from right across the spectrum in terms of age, gender, mansions, etc. Almost a year ago, after, as Empress Marina said, she made that clarion call, which may not have necessarily been new, but certainly was timely and necessary. So let me start with that to again just kind of help frame where we're going. I start, of course, with the words of His Majesty. As generations come and go, those assuming responsibility for the period do not cease to try and improve on the past in order to meet newly rising demands. In this respect, it is quite evident that to march with the time, members of the coming generation should build on what their forefathers have bequeathed to them. It is because the present generation is cherishing and keeping intact what it has received from the past that it has succeeded in attaining its present stage of development by making the necessary changes and improvements called for by conditions now existing. This would require great foresight, and the work accomplished as far as regard to this task of great responsibility is no small matter. It has been fulfilled as a result of God's blessing and His divine guidance. Those are the words of Emperor Haile Selassie I, May 25th, 1963. So very briefly, the Rastafari movement, incubated in Jamaica in the early 20th century, was a profound Pan-African foundation with four basic tenets: liberation, redemption, repatriation, and reparations, which came later, for Black people. These four pillars are distinguished and defined through spirituality, social, political, cultural, and economic dimensions. As to the latter, the ethos of Rastafari has influenced many contemporary movements, with intellectual property commodified and misappropriated by multi-billion-dollar industries such as hemp, medical marijuana, ITAL, aka vegan cuisine, cultural intellectual property, with no intrinsic or economic benefits to the African Rastafari having been realized to date. Rastafari liberty or way of life enshrines principles and best practices in regards to nature, the environment, health, and well-being, Pan-African culture, education, and consciousness, fair and equitable economic structures, and international relations. The roadmap of the Rastafari movement has been developed over the decades with equal and opposite attempts to derail and or recreate narratives which depart from early teachings, principles, and goals. According to the Mekdim, or the preface of His Majesty's autobiography, My Life and Ethiopia's Progress, quote, "A house which is built on a strong stone, if rain falls hard and flood tries to take the house away, and if wind blows hard, they could not remove it. My life and my history. If few people who either do not know or make a mistake, or if they are jealous and try to write it as if it is true and make others believe what they wrote is true, they can't move the truth from the ground." Those are the words of Emperor Haile Selassie I. So based on this foundation and our desire to re-examine, re-evaluate the roots, which are still tangible, they are roots, they are strong foundations, but maybe so the branches and extensions through our presenters who are quite capable and are really going to share a lot with us this evening. It will help us develop this roadmap that will take us to the committee's final destination, which is indeed trying to codify, to kind of borrow some words from Brother Miguel Lorne. who we are, where we are going, and the impact that it will have on Black people all over the world. So with that, I turn it over to you, Priest Dougie.
Yes, this evening, our first presenter will be the Honorable Priest Glass from the EABIC. He is living in Ghana presently, ancient of many years in the trad, very wise man, a priest, father, activist, Pan-Africanist, historian, many things, wear many hats. So, without ado, I would now turn the floor over to the Honorable Priest Glass.
Honorable Empress Marina, please unmute your phone.
New faculty of Rastafari. It's when I heard it, I was very, very attracted to the idea, because for years I've been saying that Rastafari has become stagnant and has not been growing, and I see what there are many reasons for this. I think one of the main reasons is that we got caught up in this Judeo-Christian religion thing, and it has caught us and held us in a trap where we can't move. I've been in Rastafari since the early 70s. I went to Bobo Hill in 1981, and I've been a priest since 1982.
I pray thee, Priest Glass. I pray thee, but we're not hearing you fully and we don't want to miss a word. Could you kindly come closer to your microphone?
Yeah, okay. Like I said, are you hearing me better now?
Yes, I love it.
Okay. Like I said, I've been, since 1981, I've been a part of the Bobo Shanti House. And I've propagated a lot of the religious teaching of Bobo Shanti. And since I have left the foundation and I have traveled, I've done a lot of research, and I have come to some conclusion that is different from what Bobo is teaching. This whole concept of God that we have is taken from the Western theology. Steve Biko said that before the European came, Africans didn't have church. We didn't have no building that we go to praise God. Praising the Almighty was part of our everyday life, was in everything we do. Now, European has come and taught us that all of that is wrong. They teach us that there is one God somewhere up in the sky, and that we are to praise him. And that his son Jesus came into the world, and he made a lot of promises, and he left. And that was 2,000 years ago. And we still haven't seen any of those promises fulfilled. So therefore, it's like a psychiatrist says that if you keep doing the same thing the same way every day, and expecting a different result, then you're an insane person. And that is where I see Rastafari, we keep doing the same thing every day, trying to bounce our head against the wall, moving and not making any progress. Now, this Empress Marina mentioned the idea of Christianity versus African culture. I don't think the two can coexist together. I don't think Christianity is part of the African culture. It's what has enslaved us. It's what has kept us in bondage, in colonial domination for hundreds of years. Now, how are we going to clean that up so that it benefit us? I don't see how that is going to happen. I think we need to reject the whole idea of Christianity and revisit the ancient African ways of recognizing our Creator and our creation. This, you know, it's like we get caught up. There are certain things that I think we need to define. We need to redefine this whole idea of divinity, of kingship, of royalty, is based on European domination. I mean, when we were created, as far as I know, all man and woman was created equal. So what makes one person divine over another person? Or what makes one person royalty and another person not royalty? So all these things are things we have to understand and we have to define, and we have to revisit these things. We have to be able to unlearn some of the things that we have learned. We have to let go of many things that were taught to us by the Europeans, because they're not helping us. We're not moving forward. Right now, we have to understand the battle that is in front of us. The European agenda is they say that if Africa become industrialized, the standard of living in Europe, Asia, and America will drop. And these people are not going to allow this to happen. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to sit there and let them dominate us? Their whole objective is to get Africa's resources dirt cheap. And what are we getting from it? As African people, we are not getting anything. We're not doing anything. You know, Africa is not building ships and planes and cars. We're not building refrigerators. We're not building the things that we need to make our people's life more comfortable. And this, I think, religion is one of the things that is holding us back. I've been in Africa for 2 years, in Ghana, and everywhere I go, I see church. I see church everywhere. The people, they are praying. They spend days and hours and weeks and months in the church praying, and it is not making their life any better. It's making their life worse. We are wasting our human resources by the people going into church and sitting down and praying when they could be out using their mind and creating things that is going to make us move further ahead. So my whole thing is, and my main thing in this new faculty of understanding, of overstanding that we are trying to achieve, and I know that this is not a popular view, because religion is so ingrained in Rastafari that I don't know how it's gonna come out. But we have to get rid of it because it's holding us down. We can't progress with Western religion, with Islam and Christianity and Judaism. We can't, those are not ours. I am not a Jew. I am not an Israelite. Pardon me for a second. Yes, I am not an Israelite. Israel started with Abraham. And before Abraham, African had developed many civilizations. When Abraham was in trouble, when his family was famished, was starving, and they didn't have food, he had to run to Egypt. Now, Egypt was a developed society, a developed civilization. So why am I gonna give up? It's like we saying you're giving up a continent for an island. You're giving up your ancient history for something that somebody else put in your head. So we need to get rid of that. We need to revisit this whole historical aspect of how we place Africa and the things that Africa has done for the world. We need to reclaim our history. We need to reclaim our culture. We need to neglect and refuse all of the European ways. We have to learn, relearn, and unlearn. You understand? So there's a big task ahead of us. And we have to do this. It's not going to happen maybe it won't happen in our generation, but we have to do this so that our children don't have to come and face what we're facing. Look what's going on in America. Look what's going on in Africa. I look right now, there's 50 something countries in Africa, and I can't think of one good leader in Africa. What's happening? Where are we going? It's like we have to get a grip on things. We have to get a hold on things and start to guide our path. We have to move away from the European teaching, the European ways. It is not helping us. And their whole objective is to hold us down. They do it with the food. They do it with the media, television, radio, music, all these things they throw in front of us to distract us from what we are supposed to be about. And while we are being distracted, they're coming to Africa. They're taking our gold. They're taking our oil. They're taking all our minerals. Have our people mindset where Africa is no good and they want to go to Europe, or they want to go to China, or they want to go to America. This is not good. So we need to do something about all these things and get ourselves on the right track. Thank you for the moment, and I turn over the floor to the speaker. Thank you.
Give thanks, Honorable Priest, for that strong talk and that realistic talk. As I say, we spend more time on our knees than using our minds to create what we need. We look to others, as I rightly say, to do for us what we need to be doing for ourselves. And I agree, religion has done its part, in domesticating I and holding I forward. So give thanks to such strong sound. Mama D.
Yes, I. Give thanks again, Priest Glass, Priest Dougie. At this time, I would like to introduce brethren who I've known for many decades. I've had great respect for him, and I would dare say that it was his work as a jurist that eventually inspired me also to go and get my Juris Doctorate maybe 20 years ago. And he has been an advocate, with or without his ability to represent us in certain ways. He's been an advocate from day one for Rastafari youth in particular. And in just so many ways, one of our brightest minds, intellects, heartical brethren, husband, daddy, so much more. Our brother, Ras Miguel Lorne. Can unmute, Ras Miguel?
Right. I don't know if you're hearing me now.
Yes, we are.
All right. Greetings and blessings. Greetings, my sister. Thanks for such commendable words. But above all, I thank the gathering. I thank the brothers and sisters who have been given this area of thought and have now reached a point of having a conglomeration of ideas to come together and carry our movement forward. I could easily just say ditto to Priest Glass comments because they they echo so much of my comments that I really thank the brother. And like I don't think anyone within this forum can disagree with him. It is so clear. It's not even so much changing a lot of things, but now moving away from a lot of things, because His Majesty has made it possible that tremendous amount of knowledge. It's not even new, but knowledge that were there, that were hidden, that have now come to our fore. And we can't lock our minds to this knowledge. We can't ignore it because it faces us in reality. And it is along that lines. You know, we all used to go to Sunday school and to church and sing out of those hymn books, sing hymns written by persons who had enslaved my ancestors. You know, the Charles Wesleys and the John Wesleys and the Alexanders and all these people. But now we realize that many of those hymns written by those people were merely continuing the enslavement in modern times. So what do? We don't continue to sing them anymore. We must stop singing them now and completely disband them. We respect many of our elders and our brothers and sisters in the past who have even taught us some of these things, but they did not get the opportunity of gaining some of the knowledge that we have gotten the opportunity to gain. And consequently now, whereas we build on their shoulders, we build on their fantastic work and suffering that they went through to make us know of this trod and carry it forward. So it's a relay, it's a continuum, and as we go forward. I fully agree with the brother Gast, Priest Gast, when he says, we're no Jews. But over the years, many brethren and sistrins, because of constantly reading the Bible, and you want to align yourself with the suffering and the persecution that the Jews went through, because it seems similar to what the Africans went through. So, and because you don't see it marked African in the Bible, we then say, no, we Africans are Jews. All those things we have to get rid of. We don't need none of that to qualify. One of the things too is that we really don't need, Haile Selassie doesn't need any crutch. He doesn't need any qualification. He doesn't need any proviso, as we would say in law. What I mean by that, we don't have to be saying greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, who is this day revealed in the personality. All of that is like you're qualifying, you're begging to align him with those thinking and those thoughts and so on. We don't need that, because before Jesus, there was. And we don't say greetings in the name of Zed, who is this day revealed in Jesus, who is this day revealed in such. We don't need all of that. We just go straight to Haile Selassie, what he has taught us, what he has built for us, and so on. And if we start doing that, then we would realize the tremendous work that is ahead of us. For example, One of the main reasons why I came to Ghana way back in about 2010 or so was to see the church and the house which Haile Selassie, he built a church in Ghana and he had gotten a house in Ghana also. So I wanted to see these things and to understand why it is that he would see the need that, you know, to have set up these things in Ghana. I've read where he has renovated a space in Guinea. I'm yet to reach there, but when I reach there, I'm going to find it. But I'm extolling all brethren and sisters. There are many other places and things that highly I have done that we need to do that research, need to find them, need to understand why he did it. And you'd be amazed how that will contribute greatly towards this new faculty of ideology, philosophy, and liberty that we are now building. So gradually, we will remove some of the older thinking that have held us back. And in preparation for the new tradition, in the sense of not having some of these baggages, you know, we can define, we can, as the brother said earlier, well, we need to define God. We can define God. We can use the word God, or we can dispense with the word if it doesn't suit us. If Kadamawi suits us, if Haile suits us, there's nothing to prevent us as we move forward. Because we now realize that a lot of these terms that they use, which we have adopted, was deliberately done so as to minimize our value and our contribution upon creation. So we were called pagans. We had no soul. Our philosophy was one of black magic, all these type of things. Now that we know that, so such persons can't teach us anything because we now realize the backdrop from which they came. So as we move forward, I and I must, not maybe, must define our Godhead, define Rastafari, define the trod of Rastafari, define the liberty of Rastafari as we move forward. And I'm certain that the brothers and sisters that I see here that have started out and the reasoning and so on, you know, we can do that. We cannot let the media define us because it is the media that has pushed our musicians and have pushed them in a way, and when you examine it, pushing away, because many of the artists, many of our musicians, their lyrics are in some cases identical, in some cases guided by the Bible and many of other thinking, which did not come out of the bowels of Rastafari. And when you look at it, that media is controlled by those Jews. You know, it's no coincidence that they push Bob Marley and many of the musicians because it suits them. And all I know it suits them, they are the ones making the money from it, not we the black people. Trenchtown doesn't make any money from the amount of billions that have been earned. Jamaica hasn't earned the little crumbs that they give to the artists and so on, you know, but it is the Jews and the capitalists that continue to make these fantastic amounts. We are not here for that. We are here to define and to make sure that the world understand the tradition and that those who gravitate towards the tradition now, wherever you're from, will know that this is a higher liberty and that the civilization from which this liberty trods millions of years ago, the fossils, the skeletons, the bones, the stones, the creation that have been on earth, the origin of language, the origin of our walking, our communication, the origin of agriculture when we used to live from an agricultural point of view, when we move from just hunting and gathering, all this is now coming to us. And we can't close our eyes to it, but we'll build on it. And all this is coming, whether it's from the Aldevar Gorge, whether it's from the Nile Valley civilization, whether it's from the great escarpment between Tanzania, Ethiopia, and that region. We can now build on it because it falls 100% with our thinking all these years. So I give thanks, God blessings, and I'll continue to learn.
Wow. Give thanks, Ras Miguel, for that presentation. You know, you started with ditto. And this is the beautiful thing. So many times we think that we're on different pages, but more and more we're discovering through reasoning that we're on the same page. And so the takeaways you talked, it's not about changing. You mentioned that it's moving away, moving towards what His Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie has provided for us. And that in the past, our ancients did their best with what they had. Now it is up to us to move it forward, carry it forward. You mentioned it being as a relay and going straight to Kadamawi Haile Selassie and defining him how we want through our words, our verbiage, and not allowing others to speak for us. So we give thanks again, Ras Miguel, for those few words, and I turn it over to you now, Priest Dougie.
Give thanks, yeah man, give thanks for what has been said and done so far, powerful, moving forward. I will now, introduce a strong, passionate mother, a leading empress, a activist, a very passionate Rastafari queen, why I'm privileged to say that, I've worked with for a period of time and I admire her passion. It really hold I to task many times, within I tried, and I'm talking about the esteem, Empress Esther. Mama Esther, you can have the floor.
I believe Empress Esther may be having a little challenge trying to get her message to us. So may I ask Jadi if you can go on, please, to let's see here. Maybe I'll go on to Ras Aswad and that'll give Empress Esther a moment, because what we're trying to do is have her record her message and share, because again, her voice is so important to hear at this time. So Priest Dougie, with your permission, I will go on to Ras Aswad as we sort out Empress Esther.
Sure, Mama Esther. Let's
Okay.
continue.
Give thanks. So it's always good. You see my Ghana flag always flying next to my Ethiopian flag. Tuning in here from Addis Ababa, but Ghana is always right here, Accra. At this time, that's a prelude to our brother who is also coming in from Ghana, Ras Aswad in Krabe. I hope I didn't mispronounce that. Known to many of us as a community social activist. He's an artist. He has been really right there with the Rastafari Council of Ghana and just doing so much as a Pan-African. And when he gives us his few words, you'll see why he indeed was selected to be one of the presenters today. So Ras Aswad, you have the floor. Ras Aswad, we're not hearing you. Ras Aswad, we're not hearing you. We're seeing you.
Is his mic unmuted?
It appears to be Ras Aswad.
Apparently, he's having an issue connecting to the audio.
Okay. This is one of the challenges, right? Technology or take away knowledge, but we'll all be patient with one another as we try to sort it out. Is he coming in now, Daniel?
No, I'll ask the brethren if he can disconnect and call in again, and maybe the audio option will be available.
Okay. How are we doing with Empress Esther?
I haven't gotten a response from her. I asked her to send forward a message. So just give it a few minutes and I'll report as soon as I know.
Ras Aswad? Okay, we're seeing you.
Guess maybe he has to unmute his mic or something.
Yeah, it doesn't appear that his mic is muted, so I'm not sure if it is just trying to
Can you hear me
connect to
now?
the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you go. Give thanks, Ras Aswad. You have the floor.
Rastafari, give thanks and praise. Are you hearing me clear?
Yes, Ras Aswad, we're hearing you clearly. Ready to hear you speak.
All right, give thanks. Rastafari. To begin, I would like to say that it is very important for us to go back in history and back in time. Go back to where we started as a Pan-African oriented group of people, where there was no doctrines, there was no religious fundamental. Once we can go back there, then we'll be able to find our way forward. Because as far as I can remember, in the beginning of Rastafari, it was an African Pan-African liberation movement, chanting the sound of African redemption, repatriation, and race first. That is where we look at Bible from a Western perspective. And that has derailed us to Sankofa. Go back and pick up what you have left behind. So that is where the beginning needs to go. One of the greatest failure why we do not have a proper orientation as regards to the way to move forward is the fact that we gave up the repatriation trad. The repatriation was a fundamental aspect of us reaching to the next level as a people, right? One of our main agenda was to repatriate, come to Africa where we have more in terms of size, more in terms of numbers, more in terms of resources, more in terms of being able to have direct touch, to be in touch with our tradition and cultures. After being in Jamaica for so long, in a land where we had cut off from so many aspects of our tradition and African retention, it came to a point wherein the urgent need to have that kind of connection and synergy with our African culture and spirituality. So we sold out for Christian values, Western Christian values, and gave up our divine heritage. So we got to pick up the pieces from there. If we are talking about a new orientation, that must first be taken seriously. And there's a plane flying over it, so hold on a minute, please. Yes, that orientation needs to be revisited. And as I said before, that the issue on repatriation is paramount. what is happening to Jamaica is as a result of the lack of repatriation. Jamaica has been stabilized. It is getting decadent because when the time had come for Rastafari to repatriate and come to Africa to establish and have more strength and more power to take Rastafari to the next level, that wasn't done. People got distracted and go to America, they get distracted and go to England, they got distracted and go to Europe. They went everywhere else except to Africa. And all the resources that we have worked for, I mean, all the financial strength and the resources that we have gained in Babylon end up spending back in Babylon rather than on the continent. And a lot of us, we repatriate to Africa when we are at a certain age where we have no longer have the strength and power to actually move certain things at a certain level. That should have been done in our youth. It wasn't done. Still not too late because there are still younger generations of Rastafari youth rising up in Africa right now who need to make that bridge. It is very important that the reorientation look at the political and the economic aspect of the import of the connection of Rastafari making that trad. That political and economic aspect which we had burned fire on over the years of Rastafari when we were just coming up, which was necessary at that time because we needed that space to consolidate the community a certain kind of way. So we needed to avoid a certain amount of Western influence, etc. But we had passed that stage wherein it was the time for us to understand the role that politics play in the world, the role that politics will play in Africa, and the economic aspect of it as well. Those are two of the fundamental, there are two fundamental aspects of Rastafari which has weakened the movement and put us in a position where we do not have that faculty of overstanding that we are talking about now to put the Rastafari movement on another level. It is necessary for us to redefine what politics is, because we are taking a stance against politics, which was necessary at the time because it was politics the way the politicians were doing it, so on and so forth, and still doing it. Nonetheless, what is politics? Politics about the social welfare, the social and economic welfare of our people, the development of a society, right? That is what politics is about, doing the things that is necessary to develop people to the next level. Granted, the world has been messed up by these pirates and culprits and criminals and whatever who call themselves politicians. However, we need to not surrender that aspect of what is necessary to those pirates. So Rastafari must be encouraged to get involved in the socio-economic aspect of society in a serious way. We cannot allow other people to determine our fate in terms of how we should live, what we should eat, the education, and so on and so forth. And it is through the political vehicle that we are going to achieve these things. Through the economic aspect of it that we are going to achieve. Burn fire and money are over. Now it is very important to put money as a paramount agenda for us to be able to move forward and achieve this thing that we are trying to achieve. In moving forward with repatriation and coming to Africa, there shouldn't be any problem really, because the African tradition and culture is still intact. And once the African tradition and culture is still intact, it is easy to make that transition out of that Western value system that is there. Yes, we know that there are some brethren who came here before with the doctrines from Jamaica, the 12th tribe, the Bobo Shanti, the Nyabingi, etc., and even the ones that are called EWF, which is not really a Rastafari organization of such, but a Pan-African organization, but it has been turned into a Rastafari organization now because of lack of overstanding. Those leaders that came here in Africa, they are the ones that creating the problem here right now, are the cause of the problem here right now, because they brought those doctrines from Jamaica, right, which is a Jamaican doctrine from a Western standpoint in terms of Western Christianity values and Christian values and so on and so forth. So the brethren here, the indigenous brethren here in Africa have taken up that same backward doctrines from Jamaica, and they are actually using it here in Africa and going against the African tradition and culture, burning fire and libation and other African tradition and culture, which has brought us all the way to where we are today, and it's going to take us into the future. So because of that indoctrination of a lot of these young racists that born on the continent, started by those leaders from Jamaica, we have a serious dichotomy right now to deal with, because they are holding on to that doctrine and pushing that same doctrine in Africa, right? You're talking about repatriation. How can you repatriate a white person? Does a white person belong to Africa? But you're talking about repatriating white people to Africa, right? As part of your religious philosophy, right? So some of those things, as I said before, is as a result of our leaders who came out of Jamaica with the same corrupted doctrines that needs to be addressed. So in moving forward, as I said before, that our main orientation should be, one, continue from where we left off with repatriation is concerned, because repatriation is a solution to Africa's problem. And I'm not just talking about just Ghana, the whole continent, right? The diasporans who was taken out of, the Africans who were taken out of here to the diaspora, they are an integral part of that missing puzzle that needs to put Africa back on track. So repatriation should be a key component, one of the main key components of Rastafari, again, like it was before, right? When oil started off, he started off with a massive ganja farm for the economic foundation of what he was trying to do, right? Now today you have a lot of races who are independently involved in the sale and commerce and whatever way marijuana is concerned, but it is not serving our community, right? So we need to look back, go back to where it was started, where oil has set an example of using marijuana, hemp or whatever it is, to establish a strong economic foundation at that time to keep his commune together. We should not be afraid to claim that aspect of the industry where marijuana is concerned, because we have suffered so much for that plant over the years. A lot of us went to prison, families get discharged, so on and so forth. So we should see that as a blessing as Rastafari to be able to have that within our means to make a difference on the continent, right? So right now where we are, as in terms of the economic aspect where the cannabis is concerned, we have been able to get the law passed in Ghana, and we are about to get the laws passed in every single African countries, so that we can have a cannabis association or organization or company spread out across the African continent, just like they have done with OPEC, where they're able to control that institution to serve themselves where the economy is concerned. Rastafari is scattered all over Africa. However, you are not feeling the might and the strength and the power and the intervention of Rastafari in this industry. And it is a very viable industry that can give us that economic might and power to be able to move forward, to get ourselves together. And it should be looked at from that standpoint as part of our historical heritage in Jamaica when it was started with oil and so on and so forth. The ground was laid for us to be involved economically in the commerce of that plant with the many byproducts, over 50,000 byproducts from that plant that we can get involved. So it's not just about the smoking of it, it's not just about the eating of it, and so on and so forth. There's much more one can get from it to be able to move forward. So I'm saying now that these are some of the areas that we need to look into in terms of trying to reorient ourselves, get our new faculty together, right, and move forward in that direction. Thirdly now is that the races who are coming back home to Africa must recognize that most of the races that you come here to meet, they are from a village, they are from strong cultural heritage, very, very strong background and so on and so forth where the culture is concerned. So when we are talking about Rastafari, can Rastafari be able to blend and to blend in and merge in with the African tradition and culture based on the fact that we have gotten so much of the Western value system in us? It is highly possible because it is here on the ground, as I said before, that the African tradition and culture is still intact. There are still strong family heritage and culture and guidelines and rules that are still intact. So it is not difficult for us to make that transition. We just have to let go of that Western value system and be open to receive what is here on the ground. So that is what I have to say basically where that is concerned. And I will just repeat once more, economic, political, and repatriation are the chief fundamental aspects to give us what we need to get Rastafari.
Hail him high. Give thanks, Ras Aswad. You know, you really brought it home. And again, I love that the presenters are staying in line with what we have said we were going to do, which is to speak of the past, the present, and the future. And you touched it very well when you talked about the origin being this liberation movement and African redemption, and how repatriation forms a critical part of where we are today and even the future of not just Rastafari, but of all Black people. You also emphasize the importance that you summed up again, re-examining the economic and political aspects of Rastafari. And I'm so glad that in your wise man, you were able to identify the fact that us ignoring or entrenching ourselves with Babylonian forms of economics, education, politics, etc. in the early days was indeed an important part of our formation. That Jerusalem schoolroom training really did make us different, you know, peculiar, and able to stand on our own when we started to go and now get these higher education, even finish high school for that matter. So I'm glad you touched on that. The importance again of economics and political aspect going forward and emphasizing the role of cannabis. This is so critical. As you said, for decades we have suffered, we have gone through so much. And in reality, we don't need laws to burn. We're going to burn. That is what we do. It is our sacrament. But we do need to involve ourselves in the economic and political system to really, as you said, galvanize and create this cannabis association, 55 countries wide. And although you didn't mention it, the Secretariat for the new African Free Trade Agreement, the largest trading bloc in the world, 54 African countries of 55. The Secretariat is based right there in Ghana. So everything is in our hands. The future is in our hands. So thank you so much, Ras Aswad, for those presentation. And I hope all our listeners are also taking notes, because when it's time to ask questions, we want to really be able to get some more. Oh, give thanks. And I want to thank the presenters for sticking to the time restraint of 15 minutes. It's really not enough. Priest Dougie, I turn it over to you.
Yes, Mama. Yes, Rasazwad. Strong presentation. And one key point that I brought up, you know, the doctrine coming from the West, how it has affected the continent and the younger minds rising in the continent, which is a vital point that I need to take account of, you know, because, you know, one of the things that I learned from Prince Emmanuel in walking with him, he always told I that we can't go home with the adoption that we have taken up in the West, with the residue, you know, the residue that we have taken up from the you know, the corruption of the West. So a lot of that we are seeing is creating problems right now. One's coming home with a Western mindset versus coming home to relearn what it is to be an African. Because I lost all of that. We lost ourselves. You know, we were beaten down. So we have to relearn. So give thanks to that point. That's a vital point. Yes. The next presenter will be Empress Chipo Chimayo, cultural promoter, an activist, world traveler, research scientist, many hats, brilliant sister. You know, without any delay, Empress Chipo.
Blessed love. Greetings to everyone on the call, and thank you to the ARNFO for putting in the energy to host this discussion, this webinar. As Jad Dougie said, I am Empress Chipo, and our sister Desta would say I'm her little sister. I do wear lots of hats. I am a biotechnologist, and so today I am going to be speaking based on just basically my experience and the works that I've been doing in relationship to the development and the continuation of the Triad of Rastafari. I've been listening to the other presenters and just reflecting, because I did write a lot of notes and reflected on the first time that we did have this gathering, Rastafari in the 21st century. And it prompts all of us to think about where we are, who we are, and our relationship, not just with our family, but to everyone else in this global society. So with that, when I think about where we are, one of the major things that I think about when it comes to Rastafari, presently, that overwhelming is identity. A lot, if you are really interested in anything, it has to mean something to you, right? So with that, my question that I've always asked is, who are we as Rastafari? Who are we in terms of Rastafari and our relationship with the wider global African family, right? And initially, when I was growing up and embraced Rastafari and had lots of brethren and sisters, and I grew up in a very culturally conscious environment. When you say Rastafari, the first thing that comes to mind is Africa first. Africa first, Selma, that's it, Africa first. So when you say Africa first, it means you think African, you walk African, you invest African, you everything African. It doesn't mean that you physically have to get up and go on the continent, get your passport stamped and says that you are it or have it. No, it's not something that requires a branding stamp. It's your life, it's who you are. And as such, your thought process, everything that comes out will support Africa and its forward movement. That's initially in the past, that is Rastafari. Everything you do, from the spoon you ate to the words you said, and you were open to learn, because look at it. Africa is huge, and we cook rice differently. We cook soup differently, but it's still nutrition, and we're all nourished, and we share this. So we're not myopic. We are Pan-Africanists, and so you find Rastafari all over the globe. One of the things coming out of that into the present, and of course, let me go back in the past, there was a lot of industrialization with Rastafari. And yes, we had some challenges, but we're here in the present. And so the question is, at this present time, so that's in the past, and there've been lots of work, lots of individuals, organizations, from Pan-Africanist organizations that have contributed to Rastafari in itself. Different mansions have all made contributions, but we still have the responsibility to continue what His Majesty, Her Majesty, Marcus, everyone, Batambelli, Nani, we have that responsibility. And so, I look at, in the present, I look at how we deal, how we see ourselves as Rastafari. How do we see ourselves in this global scheme, in terms of identity? And it's disappointing. We can sit here, and I can sit here, and we can talk about people that look like, because they wear their hair in a certain style. But locks is not specific to Rasta. Locks is African. So if you go among, let's say some Susu people in Guinea, that their tradition is locks. If you go anywhere, because locks is African. Presently, our look has been co-opted. Our slang has been co-opted. Our lingua, our dress. Okay, fine. That is wonderful. But the question is, what are you going to do about that, if anything? Are you going to look at that and say, listen, let me motivate myself? Let me see how I can, oh, these people really, they're really intrigued and they can weaponize my look. They can weaponize my twang. Other people can weaponize, not even weaponize, but how should I say, profit on my culture. Do I spend time fighting them, or do I stay on the path and move forward and add to it? Those are the questions I've had to ask myself, and I ask other people, you know, that question, what are you going to do about it? But ideology, who are you? What does Africa mean to you? And put blinders on, because the race has already started. You're not interested in anyone here. You know they exist. Your blinders are on, and the question is, what is your relationship to Africa? What is our identity as Rasta? And once we start understanding and taking charge of that, then we will start operating differently. And I've chosen to do that and encourage other people to do that in terms of our economics. Talk about, we can sit and there's lots of the issues that we face as Rastafarian, as Rasta people. We don't have a foundation. We don't have a lot of what we're talking about, we're well-intended, but there is no foundation. And I know that there are individuals on this call that have been working politically to ensure that we have organizations that are recognized, so that there's a voice, there's a platform, so that we can springboard from. That is critical, because when we get to the table, the question is, who are you? Who are you? What are you coming with? Everyone comes with something. What are we coming with as Rasta? Are we just coming with, let's talk about sacrament? No, sacrament alone does not, it's one of the things, but it does not define who we are. We are physicians. We are teachers. We have all kinds of roles in life. And the question that is on the table is, what are we doing to take us to the next level? And education is important. We need economic basis, right? We need management basis. There's so much need. It can be so overwhelming. And for the most part, it's easy to take, the path of the least resistance and say, okay, I'll just go with the flow. But that is not acceptable, because the world has left. This world is a different world than what we knew of, let's say 30 years ago. I was listening to the Honorable Benny Whaler, his tribute, a piece of it last night actually, and the things that was discussed, the same issues and the message that this how should I say, this extraordinary prophet brought forth. We're talking about it today. So it's no different than 20 years ago than it is now. So again, Africa, we have to have Africa first in our ideology. We have to see ourselves as African. Our scope is global. And if we were on the moon, if we were somewhere out in the universe, I don't know of yet, we're claiming that too. And out of that, we need to operate out of our African culture. All the tools are there. We need to operate out of that. So that will take care of religion. I heard our brother talked about religion. A wise man said, religion is the opiate of the people. It basically, the way it's used is the opiate of the people. We're talking about spirituality. You hear Africa, you hear spirituality. African spirituality. And that in itself, understanding our relationship with our creator, and our creator does look like us. If you go to an Asiatic person, their creator looks like them. But as Rastafari, my creator looks like me. So I should feel empowered to take it to that next level. Economically, politically, not be afraid of finances. We cannot. It would be, I mean, you cannot be afraid. We have to think about nation building in terms of education beyond what is here. It's kind of, it's scary to think that the world that has been presented at this particular time, when I look around, I would like to know what my family is saying. What is our platform? How are we approaching, these pandemics? And they're going to be a lot more. There's going to be a lot more. How are we navigating through this Iowa? We can talk, but we need to, at this point, it's like I said, the train has left the station. There's organizations that are dealing with political recognition on a global scale. There's organizations that's dealing with organizing on a community level when it comes to education, food, and clothing and everything else. But politically, we have to get our act together. So we can, I can sit here and I can speak with you. When I'm finished speaking with you, I still ask the question, where are the platforms for us to leap off to move forward? And we should not be expecting anyone to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves. We need to take responsibility for where we are and our approach. But I stand to testify that everything that we're looking for is within our culture. Our thought patterns, if we were thinking Pan-African, Rasta, going home to the continent as Rasta, we should have shed some of that Eurocentric, eccentric attitude. I mean, for example, this is just an example. Rasta, you're going home. But yet, all of the things that you're bringing home is Eurocentric. Everything that you're marketing is Eurocentric. So what do you expect? Your brother or your sister is going to try to be like you. They want to be like Mike. Our liberation, the tools for our liberation comes from our culture. If you're taking and I'm being practical. If you're going to take a book, make sure the book looks like us. If you're going to take funds, make sure it has to be Eurocentric. And not everyone needs to be home in terms of repatriation. One of my brothers said, we don't need everyone home. It's not a, how should I say? It is not a milestone. It's not a milestone for you to be home. You can be right here in America or in Guam or anywhere else fighting for Africa, building Africa. So much of the same. I thank you very much. In the past, Pan-Africanism, that's our scope. In the future, present Pan-Africanism thought, and that's what we springboard from. Thank you very much for the time. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, Sister Chipo, thank you for such a presentation. Yeah, man, strong presentation. Sister Chipo, she identified identity as a key problem. Working as Africans, using the tools that we as Africans have. Don't be marketing the Eurocentric version of things, going back to where our greatness dominated the world. See, using our culture, to promote who we are versus the Eurocentric culture. I've heard throughout her speech, identity, knowing who we are, knowing that our strength lies among ourselves. Stop looking out of ourselves for what we need. All is among us. Greater is in I and I than what is in the world, because what man has created, man can create. See? So I hear the message, Empress Chipo, strong and low. Give thanks. Mama D.
Yes, I give thanks, Jadi. Well, I always smile when my sister Chipo reasons, because it's not just out of her mouth, but her hands. This is active. She's been engaged and living in Africa for so long, you know, couple of decades. And before I move on, I just want to reemphasize one thing I may have mentioned before. This year, 2021, has been deemed by the African Union the year of arts, culture, and heritage. So for the entire year, they are engaging in different activities that emphasize arts, culture, and heritage. And this is a very important opportunity for us. And the second point is, you talked about the tools. Rastafari has various organizations dealing with many issues, social, cultural, but not economic or political. And so I think it's important that we emphasize, we support, and we strengthen those existing organizations and don't try to reinvent the wheel. So we can push things forward. But on the level of political, and I certainly would put this within that framework, our next speaker, my son from another mother, hailing out of the South Africa, some call it Azania. And some refer to him as General Toto. I just call him King's son, Toto. Again, president of the Rastafari United Front. Know to go and march in a minute for the cause. He's also the deputy chairperson of the Rastafari Continental Council, and someone who is pushing the envelope, making us uncomfortable, disrupting, and it is necessary, as all our previous presenters have said. So, Toto, I turn it over to you, my lord.
Greetings, Rastafari, Haile Selassie the First, and Empress Menenai. I give thanks, Mama Desta, for wonderful words of welcome. And also I give thanks to Prince Dagi for the wonderful works. From the beginning, we started interacting, same irate, same energy, same compassion, give thanks. But I also extend my greetings to all the honorable members in this platform. I see some other names I identify very well and I respect, like Dr. Jalani Naya, who gave me ABC 101 of Jamaica patiently for the whole 3 weeks. And I'm forever grateful. I can't think of Jamaica without thinking of Ras Jalani Naya. So enough respect. I extend my greetings also to all members of the panel. Also, my elder Ras Miguel Loni was the last person I saw when I left Jamaica. I rushed to his office quick, and all that. So that was great joy, and I still cherish the books that he shared with us. Give thanks. Having said that, my name is Tautau Haramanuba. I hail from South Africa here, born, bred here and everything. The only time I have not lived inside of South Africa is brief years of exile during apartheid and several years of going in and out and doing Rastafari work in the continent. So I will start by saying my ideology is my biology. So the greater aspect of articulation of my ideology, it's gonna have to do also with my biology, both as an African Rastafari born in the continent of Africa, and taking into consideration that we in Africa, when we turn Rasta, we turn Jamaican. You start talk patois, take on Jamaican behavior, mannerism, and so forth. And that influence your journey throughout the way. So you basically become someone else for you to be a Rastafari. So I'm going to take you through my history of Rastafari. At the age of 16, that is 31 years ago, I was a member of the ANC underground, the African National Congress military underground, Umkhonto weSizwe. It operated the SDUs, the self-defense units. So as a part of the military self-defense unit for 2 years, and then during that period, the very first year, that is the year Mandela came out of prison, that is the year when political organizations were unbanned, political materials, books that were considered to be political, some reggae songs of Peter Tosh and Bob Marley, which were banned during that time, then they become unbanned. The flood of new radical revolutionary information came through. Now, within that particular revolutionary spirit, I had a political mentor who was also a military mentor, who was recruiting me to go to what the ANC usually do, take you out to exile to one of the countries, frontline countries, or as far as Tanzania or anywhere, and train you, give you military training, infiltrate you back in the country. So during that particular year, my mentor will expose us to many radical information, videos, your Fidel Castro, the Sandinista movement in Nicaragua, a different type of struggle. And then one day he played Bob Marley, Legend. He played the video. It was during the VHS time. Put the VHS tape and he played Legend. But then when it comes to Redemption song, he keep on rewinding it over and over. I think on the third time, that is when I decided there and then that I'm going to be a Rasta. And I remember that some of my brothers who used to sell ganja, smoke ganja, they used to play reggae music. So I thought first thing first, when I leave his house, I'm going to my brother's house to go look for those Bob Marley LPs. So I discovered that they are only left with 2 LPs, Uprising, Legend, and Mama Africa for Peter Tosh. So I can begin by saying I'm a Bob Marley Rasta. I'm a reggae Rasta. I'm a Rasta who became Rasta through the influence of reggae music, but also specific message. And in this case, for me, it was the message of liberation. As I was in the path of liberation, we were fighting apartheid. I was part of the liberation movement. So my first impression of Rastafari, therefore, is and was that Rastafari is a response to colonialism and slavery. That became the basics of my ideology. Rastafari is a response to colonialism and slavery. So therefore, it's a redemption trot. It's not a religious path. So as for the issue of God, God was never an issue for me. My father was a bishop. So I was born in a very religious family. I learned about God from a very childhood. I was born in a family that talked about God. So God was never an issue. So what brought me to Rastafari was never a search of God. It in fact took me 7 years. From the first year I accepted Rastafari and said I'm going to turn Rastafari. It took me 7 years to accept His Majesty's divinity, because that idea of God conflicted and contradicted with what I was brought up in and socialized into when it comes to what God is, or when you define a God. So for me,
Toto, we're losing your voice for a moment there. We're not hearing anything. Toto? Can't hear that. We're not hearing your voice. Sound like a network issue. Daniel, our technical, can you assist us?
There's not much I can do. It's his own personal internet connection.
Toto, I can make a recommendation. We're going to do this with Empress Esther, if you're hearing me. Could you kindly record your message and then send it in to us on the new faculty WhatsApp group? Because it's really important for us to hear what it is that you're saying, your presentation. So if you can do that for us, please, we can go ahead and play that. Toto?
I think he heard you and he
So-
disconnected from the...
Let's hope that that's what he will do. And then we'll certainly, because he certainly still has time for presentation. But I love the quote, my ideology is my biology. And this is how we started. My ideology is my biology. And I think this is a very important aspect of the Rastafari movement in its origin as a Black liberation movement. And some of the things that we're facing here in Ethiopia now under the ambiguous title of Rastafari. Tau, are you there?
Yes, Mama, I'm back.
Oh,
can you hear me?
Excellent.
Yes.
We hear you. Go ahead. Go through.
Yes, Mama. So I was saying now, from you say God, for a person who speak multiple languages like this, it get processed in different language structures and arrive at a different conclusion. So therefore, I was putting into context the part where I say it took me about 7 years to acknowledge the divinity of His Majesty against the background I was grown up in as a son of a bishop, as somebody who grew up in a very religious family. On my mother's side, they're into African tradition. I've actually never heard my grandmother and my grandfather talking about God, Bible, Jesus, or any of those things. They're only dealing with ancestors and God in their indigenous language. So therefore that informed the basics. But now also being part of the second liberation movement, which was part of the Pan-Africanist Congress, the PAC, between 1990 and 1991 was part of the ANC underground. And in 1992 to 1994 was part of the Pan-Africanist underground. Now the PAC, they took us through Zimbabwe, Botswana, and then we're trained in Tanzania. Now in Tanzania, within the camps, you find that out of 10 soldiers, 5 of them are former Rasta. They had dreadlocks, they smoke ganja, they listen to reggae music, or they know somebody who they have something, a story that they can tell around Rastafari, reggae music, and so forth. So that becomes the background. But also during the weekend when we are not doing training, they have a thing, they call it the jazz hour or culture hour. And then they play reggae music, or we have poetry. So the part of the reggae music, the Rastafari discourse during the path to exile in Botswana, Zimbabwe, Tanzania has become part of the ever growing conversation that went hand in hand with liberation movement among the soldiers, among the recruits, among members of the organization. You have a lot of members of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania who listen to reggae music, who have a Rastafari background or something like that. So that became the environment. But then on the 8th year after my enlightenment and so forth, I decided to quit the army and serve Rastafari full time and become involved first with the Nyabingi House, the Melchizedek House, and then we went on to establish the Rastafari United Front, the Rastafari Continental Council, become part of the All Africa Rastafari Gathering, become part of our international trot to try to ascertain our view of the movement from Jamaica, from South America, Central America.
Tauto, if you can hear me, you're frozen. If you can refresh your page, if you can hear me.
Greetings, I'm not hearing.
Tauto, are you there? Are you hearing us? Okay. All right. You still have about 4 minutes to finish up. So if you can hear me, and same thing as before, if you want to record it and send it in, then we'll go ahead and play it, okay? Hope you're hearing me, Toto. Again, you know, we're gonna wait for him to send in that message so we can get the fullness, but it's important again, just to harken back to that
He's
notion
here again.
of
He's here
ideology. Toto, go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me?
No, it's
bad connection.
yeah, the connection is really bad, Toto.
Record it.
I think the best thing is to record it, you
I'm
know?
still
Bad connection, last Toto.
Sorry, Toto. Yeah, it's really rough. It's really rough.
Just
And we
record
want
it
to
and
hear
send
you
it and we'll
clearly.
play it. All right.
Absolutely. So that said, now, overstanding again the emphasis of culture and his history, and this is certainly the narrative of indigenous. When I say indigenous, those ones born on the continent, and this is the direct. They've not been taken away, so they're the language, the culture, these things are still intact. And the way that Rastafari is both narrated and manifested is at that point where some are moving away from that sort of Jamaicanized manner or manifestation. So I cannot hear. That's Toto. Is that your voice there? Please text it in. So sorry about that, because this is important. Anyway, we'll catch it up. Without further ado, though, I'm gonna send it forward to you, Priest Dougie, to continue.
Yeah, give thanks. One common thread I've identified from all the speakers, is that Rastafari has been seen by all as a resistance to colonization and to enslavement. So that is from the African perspective. So I give thanks for that. That's a commonality right there. Without any delay, we will move ahead with Professor Michael Barnett's presentation. Professor Mikey is a Pan-Africanist, a Garveyite, a professor of sociology, an author, an activist, a man that wears many hats. You can hardly tie him down. When you get Mikey on the phone, him do have more than a minute to spend with you because he's doing so many things. So, without ado, I don't want to hold him up. Mikey, Professor Michael Barnett, the floor is yours.
Yes, give thanks, Priest Dougie, Jadi, and give thanks, Mama Desta, and all the Rasta family. Is the audio good, reasonable?
Yeah, man. The audio is great.
I don't know about the video connection, though. Let me see if I can improve it.
You're good. We're hearing you.
Yeah, and the video, I don't know if the video connect. Anyway,
we're hearing and seeing you fine. Both are fine.
All right,
Welcome.
so give thanks. So what I'm gonna do is probably go down the beaten track a little. I wanna just track the emergence, do a little focus on the history of the movement, and then look at where we are today. And I do agree with a lot of what everyone else has said about what needs to happen with the movement. But if we look on the history, well, I was trying to do a share screen, but I don't seem to have the ability to do that. Is Rastaniel, is he on board here? Can somebody give me the privilege of doing a share screen? I guess you'd have to put me to host status. I don't know. But I wanted to show a couple slides, but tell me if that's possible or not. Okay, thanks. Let me try that. All right, just bear with me. Good. Let's go here. Let's see if it will allow. Hold on. I want to try and get something off my. Maybe. All right. So it's not doing it. Well, we just leave that for the time being because to be honest with you, the slides are. I'll pull up this window and see if it will. See if this will work. Yeah. So can people see that now? Are people seeing the
Yes, sir, we can see it. Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So essentially, and I see that screen is giving me. Okay. All right. Bear with me 1 second. I have too many things.
Can you enlarge it?
Just seeing what I can do here.
Okay.
They have a better thing there. I wanted to.
Well, as the minutes are ticking by,
Yeah.
Professor,
All right.
just elecute what you want to share with us.
All right. Well, basically, in a nutshell, two things. I wanted to track the Ethiopianism as the root of Rastafari in Jamaica. Ethiopianism as the root of Rastafari in Jamaica. And basically, what we see is a couple of things. We see that that it started with George Lyle. Can people see that picture of George Lyle? 1750.
Yeah, see that.
Yeah, all right. So he founded Ethiopian Baptist Church in Jamaica in 1783. And this Ethiopianist movement was a very powerful movement. And it was powerful because it used, although it did, was based on the Bible, Psalm 68, verse 31, you know, princes shall come out of Egypt, Ethiopia shall soon stretch forth her hands unto God. It used that, and basically it traveled from America, from Lyle, George Lyle, over to because George Lyle was a Baptist, African Baptist preacher in the U.S. from Savannah, Georgia. So he came with those teachings way back in the 1700s. And he came here as a result because the War of Independence in the U.S., the Americans had beat the British, and he came over to England as another English colony because there was a movement of those folks who got the chance to leave America after the so-called War of Independence in America. Now, Lyle had contemporaries such as Moses Baker, who also introduced the Black theology of liberation and interculturation into their sermons in churches here in Jamaica. So what they did is they revamped Christianity, and basically they introduced Mayaism and other African traditions. They were merged syncretically with the Christianity that they had been taught under the slavery system. And what happened is this made the religious teachings more relevant to Black people in the West at the time. So just going through here. But the real thing is, and I hope people can see this, is the trajectory of Ethiopianism in Jamaica. So if because so from George Lyle and then Moses Baker and other members who came and worked with George Lyle to concretize this Ethiopian Baptist movement in Jamaica, we had a movement which grew in strength. And then we had Sam Daddy Shah, who was also a native Baptist preacher. And you see, the possibility of resistance and revolution was made possible because they were able to, in an innovative way, reconstruct or revise the colonial Christianity that they were being taught and turn it around and made it into a liberation theology. So this is key. So we see the liberation theology now coming embedded in Jamaica through this Native Baptist movement. That's what I'm arguing essentially. From Sandari Sharp, we moved to Paul Bogle, who, as you know, led the Morant Bay Rebellion in 1865 in Jamaica. And then from notably, very important, we have Alexander Bedwood, who was a leader in the Native Baptist movement, what we then call revivalism. 1895 to 1921 was the time in which he was very pivotal, and he was very prominent and impactful on the Jamaican, the wider Jamaican community. And it is no surprise that one of his followers, his lieutenant, known as Robert Hines, would go on to become a very significant leader of the Rastafari movement, one of the first generation leaders of the Rastafari movement. And then we can't leave out Marcus Garvey. His teachings also laid a foundation, in fact, a Pan-Africanist template for the Rastafari movement to base itself on. So what I'm saying is that the Rastafari movement, so far as Jamaica is concerned, comes out of this foundation of liberation theology, largely due to Ethiopianist movement that came in Jamaica, Native Baptist revivalism, through that kind of trajectory. And then the Pan-Africanism of Marcus Garvey, who not only had a political dimension to his Pan-Africanism, he also had an economic dimension. Garvey had an educational dimension where he preached the value of Black history and teaching us African history and trying to decolonize the educational system. He also had other dimensions such as a military dimension, a cultural dimension, and the religious dimension, of course, because he himself said we should come to see God through the spectacles of Ethiopia. And this, by and large, is why many people actually argue, at least the EABIC argue, that he's John the Baptist of the movement, because he said we should come to see God through the spectacles of Ethiopia. And then 1930, we know, with the crowning of His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie and Empress Menen, that we have somebody coming in Ethiopia and through which Black people relate to as being in their own image. Now, very important, one aspect of the ideology, theology, of Rastafari, which is important, and I think that should not necessarily be dispensed with, and we mustn't overlook it, is the I and I concept, the notion that divinity lies in each and every one of us. And that this is important. So instead of looking for a God up in the sky, you know, the essence, the godly essence is with each and every one of us. And actually, it's probably the EABIC which actually has pushed that the furthest, where they say man is God and God is man, and that there's this duality. So that in the EABIC, we see their theology, there's a triune, where Marcus Garvey is actually divine, and Prince Emmanuel, as well as His Imperial Majesty Haile Selassie. So that ability, or that conception of having several people who are divine then comes about with this notion that there's a divine essence in each and every one of us, which I think is as a very powerful enabler, because if we see ourselves as being able to reach these heights of performance spiritually, technically, and in so many ways, because many of us are still trying to reach our full potential, especially after several centuries of slavery and colonialism and so forth. And that, what Garvey said is that, what the mind can achieve, what the mind can conceive, we can achieve, basically. And so many of our leaders, our heroes and sheroes, even Haile Selassie, what he was able to achieve, and looking at his autobiography and so forth, you see that just through the actions and through the aspirations and the focus, we see this divinity just coming through in everyday life, and so I think that's a very important aspect that should be kept in terms of Rastafari teachings. The other thing I wanted to share, and I'll see if I can put it up, is just very briefly, that the way the Rastafari movement emerges in Jamaica, needless to say, the flashpoint was the coronation of His Majesty and Her Majesty in 1930, 2nd of November. That was undoubtedly the flashpoint for the movement. But who were the forerunners? As I said, Alexander Bedwood was one of the forerunners with the revivalist movement. He helped lay the foundation, I'm arguing, for Rastafari movement. And the bridge between Alexander Bedwood and Rastafari is Robert Hines. Marcus Garvey as well, undoubtedly laid a foundation. And then the Jamaicans who pronounced Haile Selassie to be divine at the Grand Coronation, Leonard Percival Howell, then becomes one of the notable first generation leaders who down the road after preaching in Trinityville, preaching in St. Thomas, along with Robert Hines. And I've still yet, by the way, beloved sister and brethren, to find a picture of Robert Hines, still looking for it. But Robert Hines, along with Howell, initially were preaching about the divinity of His Majesty and Her Majesty to the public in Jamaica, but they found a lot of resonance in St. Thomas. St. Thomas having a strong practice of revivalism and kumina and so forth, they found resonance there. So what we see though is we see embellished in the movement of Howell, and also to a certain extent even Hines, is a strong level of revivalism was there within the movement, undoubtedly. You know, kumina is still practiced today by the Howellites. And, you know, some of the other generations of Rastafari, you know, spurned this and they had problems with this. And this is a reality that we need to look at. So that there was this dissonance between some of the revivalism that was practiced by the first generation leaders, because although it was more pronounced, I would argue, with Howell and with Robert Hines, but even Hibbert, you know, had mystical ways, and his order of Rastafari was known as the Ethiopian Masonic order. So there was also Masonry involved. But what was very notable was that he highlighted that, you know, Masonry wasn't monopolized by Europeans, that Masonry, that, you know, when you go back into Ethiopia and the Nile Valley civilization, that this Masonic, the blueprint for Masonry can actually be found there. So this stretches our, if we look deeply into it, it stretches our imaginations and it stretches our notions of what's European, what's African. And what we come to see is that African really is the birthplace of all civilization and so forth. So that Rastafari now taking on this African ideology, a truly Pan-Africanist ideology, is able to embrace a connectiveness of Africa. In other words, that Nile Valley civilization, which links Ethiopia and Sudan and Egypt, or if you like, develop what I would call a Kemetic Rastology. A Kemetic, because we know Kemet is an Asian word for Egypt. So in other words, pull Egypt in, because we must claim Egypt and all of its notable contributions to world civilization. We mustn't reject Egypt on the basis of biblical stories in the Old Testament, you know, which says that, you know, that Egypt throughout the, you know, basically colonized and suppressed the Israelites. So we must do away with those notions, which actually I think really raise a lot of question marks about the actual growth of civilization and so forth. So accept Egypt along with the Nile Valley civilization. The other first generation leader I didn't show was, of course, Archibald Dunkley, another first generation leader as well. But as I was trying to point out, what happened was that we have this dissonance between, I think, first generation leaders were different. Let me just say that they did have differences in their approach to Rastafari, but the differences get wider and become more divergent when we come to the second generation leaders of the movement, so you have Prophet Gad, who founds the 12th tribe of Israel in 1968, which has, you know, a complete, you know, reading of how Rastafari should practice. And then that should also be contrasted with the EABIC and Prince Emmanuel, who founds the EABIC in 1958. And then I and some of my, some people might disagree with me, but I see Bongo Watto or Rasponijis as the spark for the Nyabingi Mansion. You know, the Youth Black Faith Movement, he led that, and the Youth Black Faith Movement was very, very influential in the growth of the Nyabingi Mansion. But what had happened then is that with these mansions, what happened is that basically we have a divergence, is what I'm trying to say, a divergence of these movements. And that then is a problem that we also need to address, because what's happened is that instead of a convergence of ideas, a convergence of ideology, which used to be Pan-Africanism, as people say. And bear in mind, there were differences, though, amongst the first generation leaders. But what has happened is this, the second generation, we've had a divergence. And now with the third generation of leaders, because we have new leaders that have come up, we have new mansions that have come up. I'm not going to go into detail about these new mansions, but we are in danger of having more fragmentation and more and even more divergence, which I think is what's happening. So this initiative, in short, is very timely, because for Rastafari to really make an impact on the world stage, we need to see what we have in common. Now, one of the things, and I think it was Ras Aswad who brought it up, and very powerful and to the point, was repatriation is the glue that pulls all the mansions together. Repatriation, because that is a strong expression of Pan-Africanism, undoubtedly. You know, the whole notion of repatriation hinges on this Pan-African notion of we as Africans in the West, that our true home, that the motherland is the home for all Black people, you know, across the planet, you know, that we were forcibly removed from the continent, forcibly torn away, involuntarily dispersed in the West, and therefore to deal with that psychic that trauma, to deal with the mental and generational trauma that has occurred, that repatriation is one way of dealing with that. It's also another way of redeeming Africa. So Africa redemption can truly be realized through repatriation. But the real question is, though, is that
no, she didn't. Tie it all in, Mikey. Tie it all in, Prof.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do in tying it all in is that we're faced, though, with several challenges. One is how do we actually debunk some of the religious, or I should say theological background that have come from the different mansions. I mean, there'll probably have to be a couple of summits or something like that discussing the fact that we can rise above theological differences and so forth, and look at wider issues of the common political goals, common economical goals, and also look at the issue of, you know, front and face the issue of the achieving some kind of headway on the continent. Because one of the things I want to say, and this is probably the last thing, is that I think that when we go to the continent of Africa, those of us from the West anyway, is we want to look at how can we be change makers, how can we make a positive impact on the continent, and a significant impact. And what are some of the strategies that we can develop? Because we don't want to be bystanders. We shouldn't just be spectators seeing all that's going on in the continent, because there's a lot of things that are going on the continent now which are not good. The question is, how can we be change makers? How can we make that difference? I think that this is the time we're living right now, which is turbulent, is somewhat perilous. Hopefully we can rise to the challenge and see what we can do realistically, and what are the common goals which are so pressing that we see the need to coalesce and not to place any too much emphasis on our differences, in a nutshell. All right, so thank you for these words. I give thanks.
Thank you very much, Professor Michael Barnett, for the history, you know, the facts, and for bringing it all together, you know, highlighting the fact that I Livity originated from the Ethiopian, you know, way of life, you know, and even tying in the fact that the Free Baptist Church and revivalism had a great part to play in our founding fathers' lives, you know, and how great they were to create from that what you call the Kemetic Rastology, you know, and again, highlighting the fact that we need to discard things that don't work, old phobias and old beliefs and bad knowledge, now that we have greater knowledge. The fact that Egypt was the matrix of power, you know, in ancient time, the dynasties of Egypt contributed so much to the spread of knowledge throughout the world that we cannot ignore that. We must embrace that. You know, we can no longer talk about Egypt being the slave place where Israel was enslaved, and you know, that was whatever happened there was just a small part of Egypt's history. You understand? We have to talk about the Emoteps, the Akhenatons, the great heroes of those days. So, you know, give thanks, Professor Michael. You know, strong presentation, bringing the history to the table. Yes, we will now, you know, share with the listeners, you know, Empress Esther's message that she sent in to us as she's having difficulty coming on online, you know, live streaming. Give thanks. That's Daniel, your cue. Not hearing, you know. Is there issue with the audio?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're just hearing you now.
No volume to Daniel on Empress Esther.
Right? Can you hear my voice?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, 1 second now. Let me try again.
Nothing yet, Daniel. Daniel, you hearing us? Bless Daniel.
Yes, blessed. You still can't hear it?
No,
No.
there's no audio coming in.
All right. I don't know what to do. I'm trying to play it into my speaker, but maybe it's not allowing me to use the speaker for both apps at the same time.
Okay, so we would face the same issue with Toto because I understand that Toto has sent his message in.
Correct. I could forward it to the eye if you want to share it from your phone.
Okay.
If you could play
Try
it into
that.
the speaker of your computer.
Let's
All
do
right,
it.
one more.
Let's do it.
Yeah, you know, as we wait, great information, you know, great dialogue,
It's
and we
there,
need
Mama
to.
D.
Okay, so let me go ahead and try this. Now, let me make sure all the volume is up. And indeed, as this is loading, indeed, Professor Michael Barnett was able to tie historically and intellectually some dots together. The most important thing I got out of it is how indeed liberation theology has evolved and has been an essential part of the struggle for Black liberation in the African diaspora, you know? So we give thanks for those sounds. Okay, we are downloading Empress Esther's message here. Should have this in a moment. Okay. All right, let's see.
And subject his government to.
Okay, that one is Toto. Oh, Daniel, you sent me a lot at one time. Okay, let me try and sort it.
Only Manuela.
Ah, there is beloved Empress Esther. Okay, here we go.
I Selassie, Jah, Rastafari. Blessed love, my lords and empresses. Give thanks for the mighty life giver, preserver of life in flesh. Haile King Selassie, Jah, Rastafari. I am Honorable Empress Esther, representative of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress, Church of Divine Salvation, known as Bobo Shanti Ada, and leading empress of the Ethiopia Africa Black International Congress Women's Freedom Liberation League. We stand governmental, parliamental, statical, churchical, and sabbatical. The principal aims and objectives stand for freedom, redemption, and international repatriation with compensation/reparation. A divine creation rights of return, restorative justice to our father motherland, Black Ethiopia, Africa. The Congress was founded by Prince Emmanuel, now the Right Honorable King Emmanuel Charles Edwards, the Black Christ in flesh. The roots of the Congress Foundation began at Akiwak/Bakawal, where he gathered a congregation of Rastafari elders and approximately 3,000 people at a convention in 1958. It must be noted that the formation and ideology of the ABIC is recognized as a dominant mansion within the Rastafari cultural liberty. International repatriation is more relevant to the EABIC today, more than ever, regardless of all the obstacles facing I in these crucial times. The hotter the battle, the sweeter the victory. The major core principles are based on freedom, redemption, international repatriation with compensation. The Royal International Cree, hungry be fed, naked clothed, sick nourished, age protected, and infants cared for. Also, the 21 days monthly purification principles that we, the empresses of the League, uphold and still live to 365 days of the year. Presently, as you all know, King Emmanuel had made his transition in 1994. We continue to maintain the ideology of our worthy founder. We are aware that there are Africans in Jamaica and the Western Hemisphere who do not wish to return to Africa, and if they have to adopt in relation to receive reparation in the West, and such adoption does not compromise the basic core principles of repatriation and reparation, which both goes together, that's their individual choice. As Marcus Garvey would say, some of us are no good here in the West. Therefore, we'll be no good in Africa. Likewise, Africans in or on the continent. The EABIC is spiritually and physically willing to facilitate changes in our approach strategically that would guarantee our fundamental rights in achieving our freedom, redemption, and international repatriation. As the Father states, I and I must move with the tides of time. Earth a move, therefore move with it. However, my lords and empress, in view of the idea of our African Rastafari new faculty of overstanding, it's yet to be seen differently from the core values and aspiration of Rastafari. What we can appreciate in the different strategies and approaches towards the development of the core principles that lead us into the conquest of European dominance. Nyabingi against the walls of Babylon. Righteousness of salvation exalt the black nation, and sin/evil brings a reproach to any nation of people. Unity is the accepted goal. Therefore, the African people must come and work together, agitate for our fundamental Black Bill of Rights and restoration of Black dignity. Paramount important, Most High. Holy Emmanuel I Selassie I, Jah, Rastafari, blessed love.
Yes, and I give thanks. Passionate Empress towards our liberty, Mama Esther. She's identifying the realities, the fundamental, principles that govern the ABIC, that originally govern the movement, repatriation, reparations, what them call reparations today. Back in the day, we call it compensation. And the fact that, it's not everyone and I want to repatriate home. Establishing what Garvey said. There are those that are no good here and they'll be no good there. We all acknowledge that fact and realize that because we are having some problems right now, which we are trying to address that occur from situation like that. Ones who have gone home, who were no good here, and they are creating problem on the continent at this time. So yes, we totally share that sentiment with you, Empress. Give thanks for that passionate, strong presentation, and expression of the EABIC liberty. Rastafari. Mama Desta, give thanks.
Thanks. And I'm so glad we were able to get Empress Esther's voice on this, a very strong, stalwart, consistent Empress, known not just within Congress, but throughout the Rastafari movement, well respected. So we appreciate love that reiteration of resistance and again putting us towards repatriation. We do have Toto's message here, so I'm going to go ahead and do the same as I did with Empress Esther. We can finish hearing his portion.
By an African faculty of zooming the focus on a nation of Rastafari as a nation that is global, international, and worldwide in terms of its existence, albeit within less than a space of 100 years. So I will begin by saying Rastafari ideology, in my view, is dressed up, or Rastafari ideology is a theology. Rastafari uses theology as an ideology, as their main theological book, or their main book is supposed to be their ideological book, is the Bible. But the Bible is not an ideological book, it's a theological book. Albeit it's been applied ideologically in many ways by white supremacists, as we saw that the basis of apartheid as a doctrine was the Bible. They used biblical quotations, biblical references, and the three main behind apartheid are Christian churches: the Dutch Reformed Church, the ARNFO Church, and the third other African church they had. Normally, but then it just escaped my head now. So now, as a result, we find that the basis of the doctrine that the movement is building as its ideological expression, whether for advocating repatriation or reparation against the transatlantic slave trade crimes, the basis of that is itself, the basis of that movement is itself the Bible. So the Bible will therefore become an ideological basis for most of Rastafari arguments, Rastafari position, Rastafari agitation, or whatnot. So now, our understanding of Rastafari as a revolutionary movement, not a religious movement, is that one, it should be focused or concerned with raising the consciousness of our people, uplifting the consciousness of our people. And then it has turned out to be one of the anti-African movements. It is one of the movements that characterizes African knowledge in a very negative way. Talking about tribalism, in some places, Rasta don't speak their mother tongue. Their mother tongue is tribal. You know, therefore, if they're Britannic by extension. So, and this has been sponsored by ideologists or theologists coming out of Jamaica, whether through Nyabingi Order, Bobo Shanti, or tribes. So, therefore, that forms actually the basis of the problem that Rastafari we find ourselves facing. And then we have ideas that Rastafari advocates so passionately, and as long as it's central to Rastafari, like theocracy is uniquely and endemically Rastafari. But then it is particularly the government of Haile Selassie is theocratic, even when you make a point that the government of Haile Selassie is theocratic, it was actually a constitutional monarchy. First monarchy constitution. Secondly, it's not constitutional prerogative. So it's fine what we developed within this contradiction is what later term Rastafari dialectics, which is basically a reflection on contradictions within Rastafari, and looking at the law of contradictions in Rastafari as a revolutionary introspection. As a revolutionary introspection, not harsh critique, because again, the movement have theology as this ideology, it becomes emotive. It makes the movement one of the emotional movement, contrary to what it's supposed to be, the most logical about overstanding, levels of transcendence in comprehension, heights and heights. So therefore, emotional being the lowest level can be the hallmark of the motion of the movement, to the point that when fundamental reason emotions comes in a you're questioning God, or if you're not questioning God, you're questioning structures or institutions that claim to be God. So we find that
audio is very bad, Mama. Can't hear well.
Really?
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Are represented distinctly by two schools of thoughts.
I don't know if it will help. Fever, who is on Fever Plus? I don't know if your audio being on is making it a little difficult to hear as well. Let me try again.
Which from our own engagement with these issues from we
Any better?
ourselves, from Rastafari,
Yes.
a new community
A
of
little.
which obviously we took
Yeah. We can hear that.
reasoning and the teachings of Elder Mortimer Plano and our esteemed Elder Mutabaruka. And we find that both of them are actually expressing these things that we feel we've always been feeling, because again, as I've said, that the misfortune of the Rastafari in Africa is that when we turn Rasta, we tend to turn Jamaican. We tend to think we need to sound Jamaican. We need to look Jamaican. We need to believe the things that Jamaicans believe in order to feel like we are Rasta and to authenticate ourselves as such. So for us being a Rasta, it is more of a long journey of authentication than expression. So much as Rastafari is a lived experience, for us it becomes to a great extent a learned behavior, that you need to learn a behavior of certain influential individuals, figures, and so forth, and mimic that, regurgitate what they say, and therefore in so doing find expression, which therefore it greatly doesn't serve much purpose of the fullness of repatriation. And repatriation is going back to your roots. Going back to your roots means now reintegration, resettlement. You are going to your African renaissance. You're going back to your roots. And again, ideologically, we need to recognize that Rastafari is Afrocentric, but not African. And when I say not African, meaning it doesn't come out of any of the 3,000 African ethnic groups. It doesn't come out of any of the languages that are spoken in the land. I have a lot of argument with people who call South Africa Azania. My argument is simple. I ask them, which tribe in South Africa is the language Azania come from? Which tribe is a tribe of the Azanians? What language group? I have the same argument with people who say Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they are African. My first question is to ask for their ethnic origin. For us, whether they call it tribalism, tribe is the basing block, is a building block of the whole nation, the whole Africa. Africa is a conglomerate of cultures and tribes that are expression of higher principles of existence, which exist within a bigger framework of Ubuntu. These are expressed broadly in many ways. Now, we don't have time to call them tribal and so forth, so we're basically in stark contradiction with that. So we find ourselves presented by two schools of thoughts, and these two schools of thoughts is Rastafari and Christafari. It offends many people, but it is the way we look at it, that if you are going to use Christ, as most ones are doing here, using Christ to define Tafari or to rationalize Tafari, you are Christafari. If you are going to use Christianity to define Rastafari, you are Christian. And therefore we are having a problem of Christian mindset functioning within Rastafari that is causing so much imbalance that can make it difficult for Africa to find itself at home and abroad in that particular oneness. And we need to do that, because in doing that, we are acknowledging the severity of the transatlantic slave trade. But if you want to claim that people taken away from the continent 400 years ago, and then they come back, and then everything is okay, so basically, whatever they say about Africa does not need filtering, even if they contradict Africa, and which is mostly what Rastafari represent. At first, we have to ultimately develop ceremonial orders where we started to do things that were not done in Jamaica, like the burial of the dead. We were practically one of the first 20 years ago when we started to do the burial, because we find that no African culture do that, no biblical culture, no Ethiopian culture. His Majesty buried his children, he buried his wife. So that one, it is not African, and that is where now things that is African and non-African becomes a problem and contradictions that poses this argument that these two schools of thought represent: Rastafari, Christafari. Christafari using and balancing itself on Christology to define itself. Now, a Rastafari that we look at as a response to colonialism and slavery, as an Afrocentric expression of the global African in terms of slavery, colonialism, and slavery again, in terms of repatriation and reparation. Now, the projection that make us then developed some pan-Rastafari structures, like the Rastafari United Front is pan-Rastafari, and it includes all Rasta. Our motto is.
Okay. Let's see.
Endless conversations. The challenge is that with stage 4 Rastafari.
I'm just gonna push it forward a little bit.
That wait to react to, or that is a result to a certain extent of responding to a particular situation and condition. And therefore, for it then, its ideological posture to be able to be proactive, we need to contemplate deeply of a change, 360 degrees change, because a new faculty of interpretation is an empire of thought, reason, and intelligence. So free thinkers, we need free thinkers of Rastafari to the front. And we need to look at the ultimate challenges, which is basically to create a movement worthy of our posterity. So Rastafari theocracy is a misconception built on revivalist, self-sanctimonious righteousness of a subtle religious system functioning on the assumption of patriotism, patriarchy, and purity, and pursued with a lunatic religious fundamentalism. So as a result, the more the Nyabingi order, among others, claim ownership of His Majesty, like for instance, Nyabingi is the only one that say Haile Selassie is the head of the Nyabingi, so therefore Haile Selassie belongs specifically to them. So that become an ideological home of the Christafarians, this fanaticism, which come out of Western monotheism, Western monolithic, Western monogamy, mono this, mono that, and so forth. So, and that we need to deal with it within the context of African collectivism.
Okay, we are over the time, but what we will do is we will post this. It's about 24 minutes in total, but in all fairness to our other presenters, we'll go ahead and seal this up. I think it is clear what Toto is advocating. And again, it is looking forward to the African identity within the context of ideology and Rastafari and how we see ourselves. I think it's also important, the note that he made, our experience, the global African experience in relation to Rastafari, how important it is to distinguish that. We shouldn't be comparing, but certainly distinguishing it, because that is our experience. That was what led us here home, for that matter, what I call the spiritual compass, but still relying on genetic memory. So that said, we will again share this to make sure that ones can hear the thorough presentation. And again, thank you, Toto. The final presenter for the evening, and then we will be able to take some of the questions that are coming in and even read some of the comments as well. We are now going to hear from Ras Firstman. Is Ras Firstman on? Connected? Audio good?
I'm here.
Good?
Can you hear me?
Here? Okay, I'm seeing your name there. So, known as cultural and social entrepreneur, doing quite a lot of work there in Jamaica, and also putting this committee to asking various questions. What is our role? What is going to happen? Is this going to be another workshop? And so we'll see through the evolution of the webinars if we can address some of the questions that Ras Firstman has challenged us with. So Ras Firstman, I turn the microphone over to you, my brother.
Can you hear me clearly, family of Rastafari?
Yes, I.
Yes, I.
Blessed love and give thanks. It's always a pleasure to be in the presence of the Rastafari family to share. It's such a privilege. All the presenters before are people I have very, very high regards and respect for, and really keep asking myself, how I managed to get on this panel. But I really do give thanks. I think the journey that I have to share here would have to just be the natural evolution of self and observation that I've seen within the Rastafari community and journey so far. And I have been stumped with that question, about the role that Jamaica play in actually moving Africans from their natural tradition into Rastafari, people leaving their young people, leaving their traditions and so on, and then going over into Rastafari, and how unacceptable that really is, And for me, I think it's Emperor Haile Selassie I. I think the words of Emperor Haile Selassie I, the acts by which we live and the attitudes by which we act must be clear beyond questions. Principle alone can endow our deeds with force and meaning. Let us be true to what we believe. And I think that's so important to identify the universal happenings, because sometimes when this conversation goes forward, it sounds as if there's a possibility of almost a kind of a blame. I'm not saying that it is deliberate in any way, shape, or form. But for my journey, like others, as Rastoto mentioned, I am also a reggae child, and I remember those circumstances clearly. As a child growing up, 17 years old, when a friend of mine who is not Rastafari right now, but him just loved Bob Marley, and gave me the cassette, and I think it was We Refused to Be What They Wanted Us to Be was my changing point. And I mean, Profi just lived right around the corner there from me, but we couldn't really go over there because if you're found associated with Rastafari, it would be a big issue. But what got me when that question stumped me was how much the Rastafari community would totally agree. A lot of the community would agree with the same statement that Rastafari is not here to actually take away Africa or prevent Africans from being with their tradition. I mean, I came up in at the time of Bunja, when Muta Baruka rose as an entity, that entire opening of the mind conversation 30 years ago. Now that the books were available through Ras Ika and Montego Bay, Mudada, same Ras Miguel Lawn, and all of these things, same Priest Dougie, these conversations that were coming out, all we could see, all I and I could see down here was Africa, and it's years it took I personally to even connect to Emperor Haile Selassie I, because really and truly we went straight into the the crocus bag, into the depth of the tradition. And that was so important to be able to make that connection, and to have that vibration and feeling that Africa is where you are and it lives inside of you. However, on opening Rastafari Indigenous Village in 2009, it would have been honest to represent all aspects of Rastafari, looking at the biblical perspective. And I think that was when I was actually drawn into the universal intervention that took place as to this response of colonialism. Because that universal thing, they didn't leave the information of Ethiopia and Egypt being mentioned in the Bible over 80 times and no Scandinavian country even mentioned. They didn't leave that information there of Ethiopia stretch forth his hand or the conquering line of the tribe of Judah to empower us. That was not there to do that. So, I see that it is the universe that actually created that for a people who are searching to find themselves and was able to make that connection with themselves through those particular, just like how Haile Selassie was not necessarily liberated by England during the time of these wars, just a set of events that came together within universal principle that actually caused this to happen, you know? And then we started to look at that. We look at without taking away the lobbying of all our ancestors and fathers who work with that. We can't leave out the fact that these set of dynamics, even with all the hard work of our ancestors, things just happen. Internal tribal war with Europe, hence Emperor Haile Selassie voice then became prophetic. You know what I mean? Today for you, tomorrow for me. And working with Emperor Haile Selassie to see that endeavor good over evil in all circumstances, whether it be AI or whatever it be, that has been the driving force. You know, that has been that driving force for I here to really start to look now that it's a possibility that if Emperor Haile Selassie came with the traditions of Africa, it would not necessarily work like that, because the traditions of Africa were what were used to actually enslave Africa. Mutilation, all of these things that they claim were happening were sent over to those European minds to say that they were making African civilized. And for Emperor Haile Selassie to play that strategic waiting game, being the emperor of a medieval country that still see the Mosaic law of eye for eye and tooth for tooth and that kind of a relationship, and know that the foundation of human rights and so on, as those Europeans were trying to create for themselves, would be an important step to actually make, to say that, okay, Africa and Ethiopia is moving over into that kind of a world of recognizing new ways how to think about rehabilitation and so on and so forth, was important and difficult for a country like Ethiopia that see themselves as the proudest nation on earth. So it was, I think we can learn a lot from Emperor Haile Selassie, not to have a conversation of either or, but have a conversation of as well. You know, as well too, when I listen to some of my ancients here who are steep in the Abrahamic covenant approach, you know, the liberation and sovereignty that it has given them, the way how it's just difficult to sort of throw out, you know, the baby in the bathwater. I see more a kind of an assessment, yes, of that universal divine intervention that was there, that put these things together, that even when they try to enslave us with this neo-colonial system of the Bible and religion, we still found something African there. And that, you know, when the repatriation sound came, it was so important, and it was never meant to be conflicting. It was meant to go right to the source of Ethiopia. Over time, it started to go over Ghana, South Africa, but it was more kind of in line with going with where Emperor Haile Selassie is, that kind of a Christian approach, but still indigenous to Ethiopia, almost not influenced by any other outside force, grown indigenously in Ethiopia. So, you know, for I personally going through this journey, all I saw was Africa. And it was scary to really know that Rastafari could be really influencing African youths away from their tradition. You know, I remember having this discussion that was just a frightening reality. However, I still see that with skillful navigation, with celebrating our differences, which comes back to the acts, the mannerism, the behavior. Because I've seen many of organizations have started up that is not influenced by the biblical concept, and for some strange reason within our community, they still don't work. You know, and I have to start to question, where did this ancient principle of Christianity impacted that particular movement as to why that did not work? So I think our deeper issue is more, how do we speak to each other, you know? How do we accept that Emperor Haile Selassie mannerism and behavior in all our endeavors? You know, where is the reverence, you know, that we can have amongst life existence, animals, and and each other and trees and so on, that is totally embedded in our liberty of harmony and one love, you know, and you know, our separations or differences and all of these things. I think those are what we would need to find a way how to conquer, because Emperor Haile Selassie is emperor of the entire Ethiopia, which include many different thought process and mind. And you know, for us coming up in the Rastafari movement, seeing it as earth rightful ruler, it gave us an almost all-encompassing attitude to our allegiance, not just to say is our fellow men within the human community. How are we going to do that? So I think the process and the response to colonization has really put us in a particular position where we're trying our best now to be African and coming into that process. And Emperor Haile Selassie has never been colonized, that freeness, there's a disparity between the two. But I think what we can find our convergence of conversation, of how we can respect the differences, allow and bring tolerance for us to grow into each other. You know, because ones are going to defend the Christian and the Islam, that all things come out of Africa. So as a result of that, our stories amalgamated into these type of presentations as well, you know, and the empowerment that it gives them. I remember when someone told me about the story of when Jah, you know, was being denounced out of the whole Rastafari principle. And someone really had to ask, after Jah does so much for us, so there has been so much that has been built on this universal intervention that has caused Rastafari to be here today, that we must do what we are doing. We must have these conversations. We must find the tolerance to embrace all that call upon the name of Emperor Haile King Selassie and Empress Menen. But however, I think we will solve these problems by how we speak to each other, because if the Jews are talking foolishness, they're still trading 18 times before the money leave their community. If the Nation of Islam is wrong and they're doing what they're doing, they still have a sound economy in their bean pie and their paper and so on and so forth. So despite where we are in this evolutionary process, I think it's the moment of how we speak to each other, how we celebrate our differences, how we respect what each other can bring to the table, that will actually crack, you know, the surface and bring forward this great nation to be an example to humanity.
Give thanks, Ras First Man. That was really, really important. The emphasis on how do we accept and implement, as you said, the reverence as espoused by His Majesty, the way we deal with animals, nature, and most of all, each other. You know, so we really do give thanks for that. There's some questions coming in. We're gonna jump straight to the Q&A now, because our role is to facilitate, to give a platform to voices that will eventually help us, as we said before, come up with that code, that those sounds that can say, yes, this is indeed Rastafari in the 21st century, relevant still to liberation, redemption of Black people at home and abroad. So the first question I'm going to read is actually directed at Ras Miguel Lorne, and it's from Ras Gideon Sipo, fellow jurist. Ras Gideon asks, the biography and geography of Rastafari new thinking must gravitate towards Africa and its cultural heritage. Ras Miguel, what will be our view on the aspect of human and people's rights and Pan-African law within Rastafari ideological journey, and the role also of Rastafari specific media? So that's the question for you, Ras Miguel.
Right. Greetings and blessings. Shows how much we're thinking along the same lines, because in terms of that question, the role, in fact, I've listed here very quickly 12 points with regards to what role we can play in terms of the repatriation, the brothers and sisters on the continent. The laws are important and is direct in mind in terms of human rights and international gatherings and so on. This is something that we'll have to examine. But if I could just hold on the question a little, because some other things that I will say will also make part of that question clearer. Brother Ras Aswad had mentioned in his presentation with regards to the ganja and the whole cannabis and so on. I just want to point out to him and to the other brothers and sisters is that Rastafari here in Jamaica, we are not yet in the clear in terms of dealing with ganja and ganja fields and all of that. There are at least 5 cases now before the courts. And whereas they have banned me from going to courts, but my son, Michael Lorne, who's a lawyer, so he has taken up that aspect of the journey. And so there are at least 5 right now. We have cases in St. Thomas, where brothers' ganja field were chopped down. We have in Claremont in St. Anne, where the brothers were arrested and so on. We have in other cases in St. Anne, where brothers were traveling with ganja to carry to another brethren or under the sacramental rules and rights. We have sister over in Manchester. So we have quite a number of cases that we're fighting now, even though the law has been amended in 2015. And we are battling because the present Minister of Justice, Delroy Chuck, he doesn't want to issue a policy statement to all the police stations in Jamaica through the Commissioner of Police that could prevent a lot of this hostility which is going on here now. I've had matters where I had to take the judge to our Nyabingi Center at Scotts Pass for her to see for herself that we have a community, we have our tabernacle, and that the defense of the brother who was held with six pounds of ganja, and he told the police, I'm on my way.
Looks as if Ras Miguel having some technical issues here. Okay, Priest Doggy, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next question, and then maybe we can continue with Ras Miguel Bohala later, okay? Priest Doggy?
Yes, I have a question here from Mary. She asked, are any Rasta groups currently engaged with the AU?
I can take that question. Here in Addis Ababa, one of the roles that I have, I'm the liaison to the African Union AU for the Diaspora Africa Forum. We're based headquarters in Ghana, in Accra, Ghana. We have full diplomatic status and my role is to engage. Although I am Rastafari, clearly, without apology, my engagement is on behalf of the African, the Black diaspora. Those who are here at home and those who are abroad. And so the specific work we have done is to work with other like-minded organs to ensure the recognition of Black people returning home, which has resulted in things like Ghana granting citizenship that started with Nana Rita in 2013. The recognition here in Ethiopia, again, through the lobbying and agitation of ones like Priest Paul and Brother Modi, and even the JRDC and others, going as committees, less as organs, but as committees to both the AU and the government of Ethiopia. So I think in an informal sense, there certainly is engagement. I would not call it representation though in terms of Rastafari. Hope that answered the question.
Give thanks, Mama, really. We have a statement here from...
I just want to say very...
Go ahead, Ras Miguel.
Thank you. Right. So in terms of that aspect of struggle, Just want to say, those born on the continent, if we have to learn from lessons of the past now. So we must create a platform that is those on the continent, those born there and those who are living there now, in terms of facilitating a two-way communication and thinking and planning for the future in terms of repatriation. There has to be the provision of land. If you see, one of the reasons, as the brother says, a lot of brothers come home and sisters come home when they are up in age. And it would have been nice if many of them had come when they were much younger. But it's not easy to take a family to Africa if, for example, housing is not provided, if the food supply is not reliable. And these are some of the things that we have seen happen. Now, we have to look at things like if we're coming and we say, for example, we're bringing our tractors, our trucks, all these things in terms of duty-free concession, in terms of employment, what kind of businesses, and we don't want to come to work for anybody. What are the opportunities? What are the things that we can invest in? In other words, a whole portfolio will now have to be prepared so that we can learn. It's always nice to say that, you know, it's not a migration. And Sister Desta just mentioned the AU. When I came to Ethiopia, I did meet and speak myself and Kabinda with Jimmy Adisa, who was head of, they had a section which they call the resettlement program. I also spoke with Jimmy Adisa again when he came to Antigua for a reparations conference. And he did say that the AU is making provision for Black people, including Rastafari, who wish to come home. He called it a resettlement program and so on. So if we could get the AU on board, that would help tremendously. We'll have to look, do we come home in the Exodus fashion? You know, say over 100 people come in one time. Do we come 50 or do we come in smaller groups? All these are discussions that we'll now have to raise based on what we see happen in the past, where we see a lot of brethren and sisters come, hard times take them, and they come back to this part of the world gradually. We want to prevent all of that. So, you know, then we have to look at also what I've seen some Black Americans do who have repatriated to Ghana is that they maintain businesses in America, even to have 2 houses in America, and then the rent from those houses they use to maintain themselves until they reach a stage in Ghana that they can sell the houses in America, bring home that funds, and set up strong businesses in Ghana. All these are areas that I would love for us to look into, to have strong dialogue in regards to that, aspect. Now,
give thanks, Brother Miguel. I pray thee, Brother Miguel, because there's another question for you that
yes.
I'd like you to address that has also come in, because there's questions coming in for all the panelists. So I'm going to have to be.
Right.
So this question for you, if you can keep it maybe to 2 minutes or so, it's from Rasila. Really important. Define repatriation from a legal perspective versus the right of return home for ascendants of the transatlantic slave trade.
In terms of the right to return home, the nearest we have come to is Ghana. You know, in terms of a law, or in terms of some sort of legal structure, in terms of preparing for us and talking about the right of return home. I don't really know of any other country that has a law, a legal right that says Africans in the diaspora. There have been a lot of talk, but in terms of bringing it down to law, this is why it will be important if we bring it up at the AU and make it a law across the board in terms of the legality of the right to return home. We have always called it repatriation. They have found other ways to call it resettlement and all that type of thing. But it hasn't yet reached the level of a law in most countries. Even when I went to Zimbabwe, I discussed this with some of the, for example, the governor of Mashona land. And he says that, look, we have set aside land for those who wish to come home. So there has been that type of thinking throughout different parts of Africa.
Yes.
But the extent to which say, no, I have a right to return, we want them to develop it now into a law so that we can feel more secure. So there's still some work to be done, both on and off the continent. And as time goes on, we can gradually correct some of the problems that have occurred in the past. Give thanks.
Give thanks for that, Brother Michael. Really give thanks for that. And an update before I pass it on over to Priest Dougie. Here in Ethiopia, a law has been passed, and it was based on a policy paper that we submitted in 2013 and was resubmitted again. But that was first under Meles Zenawi's government, then again under Haile Mariam when Prime Minister Portia Simpson visited Ethiopia for the 50th anniversary of the OAU. Subsequently, Parliament did pass an act, and it allowed a majority of undocumented Rastafari living particularly in Shashamane, but certainly throughout Ethiopia, what was called foreign national of Ethiopian origin. And so this is now on the books. Mind you, it's a bit different than the right of return because it stipulates you have to be here a certain amount of time, 10 years, keeping in mind it was majorly to address the undocumented community that was here, mostly from the 1960s, 70s, 80s, etc. So
Yes.
that is now a law on the books. The problem we're having with this is when we wrote the policy and submitted it, it was submitted under the umbrella of African returnees, right, of African origin, including Rastafari of African origin, right? And specifically with a history tied to the transatlantic slave trade. Yet what has happened now, we have had organizations in Ethiopia that have allowed some of their members under the definition of Rastafari, forget about the black side, the ancestry side, to now receive this same document, which I consider a birthright, that recognition, because the repatriation is important, absolutely. Then what? So this is where the recognition and the reintegration comes in, and these are the things we're working on. Priest Dougie, I turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mama. 1 second. This question is posed to Empress Chipo from Brian Jafta. Empress Chipo, speaking on Rasta identity, what would you advise on the foundation and direction in terms of identity and the question of unity? You mentioned political, economical, and security strength for Rasta. Can you explain?
Could you repeat that last statement? You got chopped out. I understood the question was on identity and how do what is my definition of
let me just repeat then.
Yes, please.
Speaking on Rasta identity, what would you advise on the foundation and direction in terms of identity and the question of unity? You mentioned political, economical, and security strength for Rasta. Can you explain, please?
Okay. In terms of identity, I go back to Africa. There's a background noise. Okay, so thank you for that question. I go back to when I'm speaking, that concept of not just the physical.
Turn off our microphones, please.
Okay, let me revisit that again. Okay, so thank you for that question. When it comes to identity, I was speaking in terms of of African identity, not just in terms of a physical or a biological, but all encompassing with the ideology, African ideology. So I don't, in terms of the ideology springing from African ideology in terms of politics, our interactions on a political level, the art of making decisions locally within the family on a broader spectrum as a nation interacting on a even higher global political level, making those decisions. My point is that we do have to come from an African perspective. Remember, Rastafari, the concept of Rastafari, the view of Rastafari comes from an African perspective. So previously, Dr. Desta talked about having representation in the African Union so that we can have a voice. I'm saying that in all aspects, coming to every table, whether it's a local table in your local plantation, your local jurisdiction, because the concept of Africa for me is Pan-African. The concept of Rasta is Pan-Africanist. It is global. We are global. So when it comes to decision making, when it comes to economics decisions for Africa, for our development, we need to come from that platform. But of course, I am not naive, and no one on this panel is naive in knowing that we do have shortcomings because the institutions are not in place. We are working on those institutions. We are much further along now in terms of having institutions in place that we can springboard on those institutions now than we had, let's say, 20, 30 years ago, or even 40 years ago. So that, I'm hoping that I did answer the question. If not, please revisit. Thank you.
Give thanks, Sister Tito. We're trying to read a couple of the comments that are coming in. Let's see, Professor Barnett, give thanks for the historical linkages of the Ethiopian movement and Rastafari movement. And in South Africa, we had similar connections, including the Ethiopian revival movement and Garvey movement influencing Cape Town and Gauteng and Namibia. And I think the point there is that, again, we're evolving, we're moving. So we're using the word new, but we really should not be afraid because there is nothing new under the sun. Right? We're just continuing to evolve and evolve. And as we come home now, we're recentering this Pan-African imagery that we have had to pull together, right? Little Kente, as I always say, a little Shama, a little Kuba cloth, a little Ashoke, as we try to reassemble what was taken from us. So when we come home, we can actually get into the origin, you know, and the source of our culture, heritage, and identity. Is there anyone that has a question? You can unmute and go for it. And remember just to keep it, whether you have a comment or a question, try to keep it short. Okay, I say Ras iPhone, Ras's iPhone. I see something happening, but I don't hear anything. Raseku? Okay, we're not hearing you, Ras.
Blessed. Blessed.
Yes, I. We hear you now.
Oh,
Hey,
give
no,
thanks.
hear you.
Give thanks once again, you know, for the presence of, you know, equal rights and justice amongst us. Give thanks, you know, for our human rights, you know, that was established, you know, in this modern time by our worthy founder, you know, great leader, Emperor Haile Selassie with Empress Menen, you know, in that time. And I give thanks once again, you know, for this great opportunity, you know, just to send forth a word, sounding a power that from the heart. Man come from here in South Africa. Give thanks, you know, for Rastafari to reach us from in the West, you know, fulfilling prophecy and history, you know, even for the economical, you know, economical knowledge that you have given us even from the West. For in the times of old, Africa was dealing in equal rights, you know, without need of what you say. There was no need for monetary things. We just give and share, you know, the Ubuntu way, you know. So, and I still give thanks for that. Most High Selassie, Jah, Rastafari, blessed and sanctified, my Lord and Empress, Prince and Princess Nyamfa, born and unborn. To give thanks, Honorable
Yes, man. Greetings. This is Ras
family
Crucial.
of the organization.
Yeah, man. You'll allow me to speak, right? I'll wait for your sign up. This is Ras Crucial here in South Africa, the original reggae ambassador. Yeah.
Someone
Yes,
blocking.
Rasja Crucial, and then after that we'll have Sister Ankoma.
Yes, Mama. Give thanks. Yeah, man. Greetings. Like I said, I'm from First Loras in South Africa, Chipe Province. This is Jack Crucial, the original reggae ambassador. Yeah, we are one of the foundations of Rastafari here in South Africa. Yeah, man, give thanks to many people who just passed and gone, but we still here, we still representing the movement. Yeah, in the earlier days, you know, because what make us to become Rastafarian, because we didn't want to belong to Christian. In South Africa, there was Christianity. So we didn't want to be Christian. So we saw Rastafari as okay. If not Christian, then you can be Rastafari. But now along the line, look like we got infiltrated. Now we got brothers coming in now, representing now Rastafari, but using in the name of Jesus Christ. So we used to have a big argument.
I don't know. We will explore the question, Rascalos, and nothing was vague in response.
Akredie. We're hearing some other voices there. Ras Crucial is reasoning.
Yeah, so we used to reason with the brethren. Like I said, look like now here in South Africa, we got infiltrated. You know, they are brethren, they came now as Rastafari. But now they are reasoning, they were like putting more Jesus Christ in front, even more than Haile Selassie, you know. But now we try to sort that out. So we end up now like we split up. We even have now people like who are strictly Rastafari, you know. So people like us, you know, yeah, man, we represented the movement, trust me. Yeah, man. Even guys like Mutabaruka, when they visit South Africa, we used to link up with them. So Mutabaruka did inspire us a lot. Even guys like Maccabi, you know, when they come here, because their reasoning was like on the same line as us, you know, the type of Rasta we are. Because we heard that we don't have to believe in some God in the sky, you know. Yeah, man, some sun, God, thing like that. So, yeah, man, let me just be brief. Give thanks for allowing me to speak now. So, and I'm also give thanks to Ras Jabulani Trevor Hall, because he just came here in my house to visit now. So it's him who showed me to come in Zoom. So he also gave me the numbers and the link. So big respect to the elder there, Ras Jabulani. Yeah, man. God blessing. God crucial. I'm out.
Blessed love. Yeah, them hear me.
Aye, yes, I, Rastafari.
Greetings, greetings. Yeah, them here, and I.
Yes, fire.
Well, I'm living in Trinidad and Tobago, and I have a question for the elder races. Any of the elder races and them. I know, like in the earlier days, Rastaman used to say, "Well, we're not going and die," and it I know a true Rastaman ain't go dead and certain things like that. And then time passed now, and not for the elders them dropping out. I want to know if Rastafari as a community want to develop some funerary rites, if they think it's important to develop any kind of funerary rites. Because as it is, when a Rastaman pass out, they just give you back to your family who might bury you in all kind of different orders, where is not a Rastafari. So I want to hear what the elders and them have to say about that.
Good question, Aya. Great question. Elders, Priest Glass, you want to touch this? Any elder, anyone can respond to it.
Yeah, I think this is Kimani here, Langa, representing NNC UK.
Yeah, man. Jack
I
Kushal
think
can
the
also
other. Huh?
I say I can also respond later after you.
Okay. This is actually a little bit harder than the first book.
Yeah, I'm responding to that question on the rights when someone transition. The National Nabingi Council, Ancient Council, within has decided that what's an important aspect of what the Ancient Council wanted to leave as a resource to the youth. That when someone has transitioned, I worked out a plan program for dissemination to the wider public as well. Putting out a template sort of the rites or ceremony for that transition person. So if anyone wants to know more about that, could get in touch with the National Nabingi Council of the UK, either through myself or the chair, Sister Livette.
If thanks.
Rastafari, Majesty be praised.
But to answer the question, yeah, it's about time Rastafari start to, develop mechanisms that serve our community. And as the brethren said, for I wouldn't like to know, say, I trod out and I am returned to my people them to bury in a Jesus name or some other name. So, definitely, I and I need to streamline and get institutionalized within I and I concept, a principle of sending our loved ones on their journey to the ancestors. Yeah, man, give thanks. Next question.
Wait, Jadid, I pray. This is Empress Chief. I would like to just add a punctuation to you and our brother's statement. I know in this tribe there have been serious attempts to come up with standard procedures for not just burials, but for marriage and for acknowledging new birth into the society. These are tenets of the African culture. Okay, so I know that in different houses, and I have participated in researching from an African perspective to help to come up with processes so that we can address those tenets in the family, meaning again, marriage, burial, not looking at, I don't want to use any European terms here, but definitely acknowledging new births within the society. Okay, so those institutions, we know they are forthcoming, we need them, but from an African perspective, so that we can move forward. So give thanks. Just wanted to
give thanks, Empress.
I'd love to come out and
Ras Doggy. Ras Dog, just want to say that
yes,
in that regard, yes, Ras Ivai has developed
Brother
You're
Miguel, voice
you're
going
out,
up.
Brother Miguel. But I acknowledge what Ras Miguel is saying. Ras Ivai has developed a ceremony. So have I. Several of I and I have attempted to streamline it. But what we need to do now is institutionalize it in the Livity. You understand? Where it is fully accepted across the board as a way of life, you know, because death is a part of life, or transition is a part of life. So we need to institutionalize it within our practices. Yeah, give thanks. And Koma, you were next in line to ask a question.
Well, my brother, is I and I who know the question about the rights, about the funerary rights, you know?
He asked the question, Daddy.
Yeah. So anybody else can move forward. I asked that question there about the funerary rights.
Oh, give thanks, my Lord. Bless you. Next
Yeah,
question online. As we are coming down now, so let's just take the last set of questions.
I wanted to come in on the funeral there. I can just add something, if I'm allowed to speak. Yes? You allow me to speak?
Go ahead, my brother.
Okay, respect. Yeah, job people, in connection of the burial, like we lost Banuela on the 1st, and we also lost Uroy last week. And I see it is reported that Uroy will be laid to rest on the 28th of the end of this month. So I'm having a concern there. Look like since these guys, they are planning the third wave pandemic of Corona. So they are going in Jamaica, they are going to use Uroy's funeral as a center where they will come and spread Corona to you guys. Yes, I've been following Tanzania. Yes, people, this is very serious. I've been following Tanzania. In Tanzania, there's no Corona business. So I knew what happened there. So these guys, they will be coming in Uroy's funeral and spread this. So how are they going to spread it? People, be careful of the mask and be careful of the sanitizer. Because what's going to happen, they're going to tell you that they are following the protocols of the burial according to the COVID laws. Then there will be guys who will be coming with sanitizers. So they will be forcing you to use their sanitizers. And some, they will also come with the mask and give to your people. So the people will be using those things soon will be also get affected with COVID. Then they will say, the third wave has arrived, as we promised that the third wave is coming. So they will say now the third wave has already hit Jamaica. Yet they will have spread Corona into you guys through sanitizer and the mask. Thank you, Cha people.
Give thanks for all the feed forward. I think we're going to start wrapping up now. Priest Doggy, is there time for one more question?
Yes, since the hand is raised before we closed it, go ahead and take that one question.
Which one is that?
iPhone JI.
I'm blessed.
Love.
Give thanks.
From South Africa in regards to Christianity. As far as I'm aware, Jesus was not a Christian, he was Hebrew.
Your audio is not clear.
I might have to move around.
Wow, audio is really bad.
Yes, your audio is bad, my brother. Yes.
The audio is poor. Is there someone else, maybe while he tries to get it together, is there someone else that would like to?
May I?
Who is that?
I beg the Jabon.
Is it any better now?
Yes, there you
Yes.
go. Much better. There you go. You have the mic.
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So the 2 points I wanted to make was that the brother from South Africa mentioned Christianity and Jesus, and as far as I'm aware, Christianity took Jesus from Judaism or Hebrews or Israelites. That's the first point. The second point was that in relation to burial, it's the Rasta and the drums and the burial has become so pot. If they're not careful, they may be the place, because lots of Black people now would love to get buried by a Rasta. So because of the ritualistic style of it, to I, that's a bit of a contradiction where we become the best undertakers, because originally we were supposed to be or bid. Anyone with lots of it would make them unclean. So that was a point I just wanted to make. Give thanks.
Your audio coming in and out. So sorry about that.
But like I said, it is.
We give thanks, Virgin. We give thanks as we wind down.
Yes, no, it's this has really been a compelling. Remember again, our committee's role is to facilitate the voices, help us pull together as much information as possible and education as possible, so that we're informed when we do come together in May, which is our target, to look at how to compile all this information in a succinct way that no matter where we are or where our challenges are facing us, just as Brother Miguel mentioned, whether it is in regard to repatriation and immigration, land issues, whether it's education, as some has managed to mention. Once we have a clear overstanding, again, codification or canon, for lack of a better word, this is going to be an instrument that we will be able to use to strengthen existing organizations and mansions, as well as move the needle along where it comes to repatriation. And I have to include this other R, reintegration, because it is crucial. This is one of the challenges we're having. But luckily, we have organizations such as Africology in South Africa. We have RCC, Rastafari Continental Council. We have enough Rastafari organizations, indigenous and otherwise, on the continent that can help facilitate and are helping to facilitate the process of reintegration. But we have to start with the root to figure out again, what are those ties that bind us together as Rastafari, and for the benefit of Black people at home and abroad. Because although subsequent effects from the movement is impacting things universally in the name of love and humanity, until the plight and the justice for Black people has been achieved, we cannot begin to discuss anything else. So our work is ahead of us. We give thanks, Empress Marina, for really inspiring this time and this moment to be able to bring us forward. And this first webinar will be followed with a second, Rastafari Woman, Recognition and Inclusion. This is really, really crucial, So Priest Doggy, I'll turn it over to you for vote of thanks and some final words to our beloved family.
Yeah, give thanks. I'm sorry that everybody's question couldn't be dealt with today. And I see here that Rasila said that his question wasn't fully addressed. He would want a little more in-depth explanation. This conversation doesn't have to end here. It can continue on the ARNFO Facebook site. So you can take it to Facebook and you know, continue the conversation and get more of your questions answered if you wanna. I give thanks for the participation of all the panelists, all the esteemed speakers, you know, who did a magnificent job today. This conversation has started. This is not the culmination. We're just beginning to reason amongst ourselves. You know, we are grounding, my brethren and my sisters. And as we ground together from our grounding, you know, we will find the map to the future that we are searching to draft at this time. And it takes all of I and I's input, you understand, to do this. We are facilitators. The African Rastafari New Faculty of Overstanding group that is seated, we are just facilitators of this conversation. It takes all of I and I to determine the path forward. You know, give thanks for all of the ones who took time out of their busy schedule to be on this program this evening. And we look forward to seeing you on our other webinars. Like the Empress say, the second one is Woman. And let us be back here to discuss the role of the Empresses. You know, we have slighted them, not just I and I, but the system, especially the Christianity that we are talking about, have dumbed down the daughters so much. And they are constantly fighting for their place forward where they're supposed to be, at the center of our universe. Because without the mothers, there is no continuity of life. It takes the Empresses, you understand, for I and I to be full. See? So let us be back here on the 21st of March to reason with the Empresses and hear what they have to say and what they have to contribute towards our future development. Give thanks, everyone. Empress, go ahead.
Daniel, who is working unceasingly and under enough Mama Desta pressure to make sure that everything is perfect, because we wanted to really show our appreciation by starting on time and doing everything to the best of our ability to show the value that we have for our presenters and every participant that has taken 3 hours out of their time. So just a heads up, March 21st, as Priest Dougie mentioned again, is Rastafari Woman Recognition and Inclusion. April 4th, Rastafari Social Affairs, Health and Welfare of the Movement. Jack Crucial mentioned before the COVID crisis, it is the elephant in the room. April 18th, Rastafari Historic and Current Advocacy on Political Affairs, including repatriation and reintegration. So Rasila, we hope you'll be present to help us, you know, walk through and unpack that issue. Then on May 2nd, Opportunities Access for Economic Development. That is on May 2nd. May 16th, Protecting and Preserving Rastafari Culture. So these are the topics that we're addressing, again, with the intent that by the end of May, we can compile a document or a reference that we can all use as this roadmap, you know. So Priest Dougie, giving you again the final word, and just thanks to everyone. It's after midnight here in Addis Ababa, getting cold. But so happy to see everyone's faces. Truly, truly, truly love it. Ras Mikey, Sister Chipo, everyone, Ras Gideon, you know, really giving thanks and full of joy. Priest?
Yes, it has been an honor to be a part of this discussion and to be among such bright minds. You know, I look forward to the other webinars and to attend all the, you know, the webinars that are being hosted by the different Rastafari groups right now, because it takes, again, all of us to come up with the roadmap, to come up with the answers to questions never posed before. You understand? There's no answers in the pages of history, as His Majesty said. See, we have to look to each other and to the Almighty to find the answers that we seek. So let us continue to endeavor, to persevere, to overcome the shackles of enslavement and colonization. Seeing free Mother Africa. Seeing one black love. Bless it. Luther continue.
Majesties be praised. Yes, Rastafari.
Aye.
Yes, one last word. People avoid the hospital. Avoid sending Rastas to the hospital. In 2018, they told me that you Rasta, we are going to kill you in hospital. So people don't die in hospital. They get killed or they get depopulated. Thank you.
Give thanks.
Give thanks, give thanks, give thanks.
Yeah, Daniel, bless up. Give thanks. Thanks, Empress
Ras
Marina.
Daniel, give thanks for their strength, their technical genius as usual. You know, give thanks for the time you take away from your family to help us put through these works. We don't take it lightly because family comes first. So blessings, heartfelt love to everyone. Rastafari.
Rastafari.
It's not hot and it's not cold in here. It's hot outside. Come, man.